of closed session, and there are no actions to report. And consequently, we're now going to begin the regular meeting of the Ross Town Council for February 13th. Our first item is the posting of the agenda and changes to the agenda, and I understand there is a change. Item 12A, is it, or B? B.
Yes, Mayor, the agenda has been posted. I am requesting that you remove number 12, having to do with 12 Canyon. And I'm also at the request of Councilmember Salter to pull from the consent calendar item number 7E, which is the quarterly financial report.
All right, very well, thank you. So that brings us to item 3 on the agenda, open time for public expression. This is the time for any member of the public to address the council as to a matter that is not on our agenda. If you're here to speak to a matter that's on the agenda, please wait until that agenda item is called. If anybody does wish to participate in public expression, yes, if you could please come to the microphone over here and state your name if you would, and then you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Bruce Selfridge. I grew up here in town. My father was a council member. My mother was a treasurer of the town. I lived here for the first 30 years of my life. I love this town. My grandparents had homes here. 52 years ago, I became a volunteer fireman here in town. And I worked there for 37 years, retiring out as a fire captain. And today I'm coming to speak about the town's decision to eliminate the fire engine here in town. And it's very disturbing to me. My brother was also a volunteer fireman here in town. He went on to become deputy fire chief of the county. And my closest friend is Don Ahrens, and we speak daily, and I'm sure most of you know who Don Ahrens is. He used to own the grocery store, and he also was a volunteer fireman. And we're just very upset that the town has decided to close the fire station. And there's a lot of, I know I have 3 minutes, which is, it can be difficult for me, but let me know if I run over. There's so much this fire department does for this town. People think of the fires and the medical aids, but in the last two floods in the last 50 years, the worst 2 floods in 50 years, I was on duty, and this town is totally defenseless during a flood. The town gets divided in half by the creek. We can't, go from one side to the other. We had to put an engine on each side of the creek till the creek subsides. In '82, we were unable to get around town, and luckily the then police chief had a 4-wheel drive truck, and that's what we were using to respond to fire and medical aids and police calls. After the '82 flood, the town bought a 4-wheel drive truck for the fire department. They also bought a large SUV for the police department so they could get around in high water. The current patrol cars can't go through high water. It's just, that's the way they are. And for, there's the flood, the aftermath of these floods, it takes, days. We're out pumping basements for the people here in town because they didn't have power. Their little pumps in their basements couldn't operate. So we were providing that service. And those pumps that we had had a dual purpose. We could use those in summer if there's a large conflagration, a large fire where we know we're going to lose hydrants. The hydrants aren't going to be operable. And there's been a lot of publicity recently about that in Southern California. And if you go to the fire station, we have a large map similar to what you have there, but much larger. and has a little blue pin all over that map, and those are swimming pools. There's well over 1 million gallons of water in the pools here in town, and we would train and have those pumps available in case we need those pools as a water resource, in case of fire or earthquake or whatever. And I don't even know where those pumps are today, or if they're even maintained anymore. So that was, and medical aids, we, the fire department is normally the first on scene. We have paramedics that are here in town, but they may be responding from the hospital or from shopping up at Red Hill Shopping Center or training in San Somo. So the fire department is important to be there. And I'm sure Dr. Robbins can attest to it, that it's not minutes, but seconds that you need to get initial care to these people. Because we have EpiPens, we have defibrillators, and please reach out to me if you have any questions whatsoever. And I love this town. I care about this town, the homes, the people. Please have think about your decision.
Yeah, well, thank you very much
Thank you very
for
much
coming
for your
down here.
time.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Another gentleman, public comment. Yes, good evening.
Hi there, I'm Mark Goldstein. I live on 125 Winding Way for the last 25 years. I want to thank the council for the pedestrian pathway along Laurel Grove. For those of us living on that side of town and who walk our dogs to the post office almost every day, it's a huge boon. That being said, I would recommend we address some traffic issues in town, specifically putting in some additional stop signs. There's 3 stop signs on Laurel Grove from Kenfield to the Ross border. There's one from the 5 corners all the way into town. Cars speed incessantly down Laurel Grove. Most cars do not stop at the stop sign. I've been walking my dog many times where they don't even hit their brakes. During rush hour particularly, that's a shortcut for people who want to avoid coming through town on Sir Francis Drake. So a stop sign on the corner of Winding Way. Can you get a little closer? Sure. On Winding Way and Laurel Grove would be greatly appreciated. Additionally, especially with all the delivery trucks in town nowadays, the cars and the trucks are racing down Canyon Drive, up and down, nonstop. There's 2 stop signs on Winding Way in the Bellagio corner, but there are no stop signs coming down or going up on Laurel Grove. So stop signs there would be greatly appreciated. And on Canyon, yes, correct. On Canyon at the corner of Winding and where Bellagio meet. The other thing that would be helpful, one additional thought, is we have this kind of funky barriers now at the corner of Canyon and Laurel Grove. And there's a sign announcing crosswalk, but there's actually no pedestrian crosswalk in on the street. So if they could put some paint down and put an actual crosswalk, that'd be greatly appreciated. I know there's a plan to continue the pedestrian walkway all the way down through Ross. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your consideration.
Yes, thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to be heard by way of a public comment here tonight? Is there anyone on Zoom?
Yes, there is.
Have a
One
raised
moment,
hand, all
Mayor.
right?
Dawn Ahrens?
Hello? Hello? Do you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, Julie. Hi, Dr. Robbins. Long time. How are you? I sent you guys a letter a little while ago stating what I think, just supporting what Bruce said. We live in Sonoma now, but I joined the fire department and was in the fire department over 20 years. And I saw what they did for me during the flood. I think you guys are making a big mistake. If you take Engine 18 out of town, I've been following what the medics do. I've been watching what the engines do. You guys are going to be with unprotected for quite a while at different times on different calls. And you got to find a way to keep that engine in town and make sure you don't, build something for the paramedics that might not house an engine in the future. Because I think from what I have been researching is, 10 minutes or more is unacceptable. If you have someone who's having a medical emergency, look at your watch. 10 minutes is a heck of a long time. It's a lot longer than 8 minutes, which is an average time. And, I went to a lot of fires in town in the 70s and 80s. Doesn't happen a lot now. The main thing is getting there quickly, getting water on a fire. Generally speaking, a fire will double in every 2 minutes. Put some wind on it. There hasn't been a fire recently. There will be another one at some point. And I just think you need to do that. And, I love the town too. I miss it tremendously since we moved. Anyway, pretty much what I have to say. Please read my letter. Like I said, there's a lot of things you guys are missing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so I'll close open comment, and we will go on to agenda item 4, which is the mayor's report. One of the many advantages of living in a town like Ross is our sense of community and shared values and vision. Our town general plan, adopted in 2007, states, "Whether we represent a third-generation Ross family or moved to town yesterday, we share many reasons for choosing Ross as our home. Its historic character, small-town charm, tree-lined streets, excellent school, wooded hillsides, and meandering creeks." In spite of the undeniable advantages of living in a small town, there are also challenges. Of the 11 cities in Marin County, we, along with Belvidere, are by far the smallest in terms of population. We must provide the same basic services as our much larger neighbors. Our revenues are sharply limited by Prop 13 and other state laws. Meanwhile, our expenses, particularly in the public safety area, are increasing faster than our revenues due to inflation and other factors. Belvidere is similar to Ross not only in population but also topography, with some residences located in relatively flat areas, but also with many hillside homes that are difficult to access and located on steep, windy, and narrow roads. For many years, Belvidere had its own legacy fire station. Then in the early 1980s, in connection with reconstruction of its public facilities, it decided to close the station and instead contract for fire and emergency medical services with the Tiburon Fire District, which maintains a fire station only 0.6 miles away in downtown Tiburon. In Ross, we have long recognized the increasingly pressing need to rebuild our nearly 100-year-old town public safety and other facilities because they have become obsolete and dilapidated. In 2021, after extensive public outreach and a series of meetings, the council reached essentially the same decision as Belvidere years earlier, based on the fact that rebuilding our old legacy firehouse was not financially feasible, and that nearby larger and better equipped fire stations, one of them only 0.6 miles away in Kentfield and another 1.1 miles away in San Anselmo, would be sufficient to ensure that emergency fire and other services would still be available in Ross. Ross has one additional advantage that Belvidere does not have, which is it is the site of the paramedic station, an ambulance that are slated to remain in Ross after the fire station closes. Currently, the Ross Valley Fire Department, which Ross joined in 2012, is the only department still using two-person engines in Marin County. The reassignment of our firefighters after our station closes will facilitate the transition to three-person engines, which can respond faster and more effectively to fire and other emergencies in Ross and other communities served by our department. In addition, the new state-of-the-art Marin County Dispatch Center for Fire and Emergency Medical Services opened last year. By the time our firehouse closes, the dispatch center is expected to be fully operational and have a much improved ability to prioritize and dispatch the right resources to each emergency, including medical emergencies. Truly life-threatening emergencies represent only a small portion of emergencies in Ross, but the ability to quickly identify them and get appropriate first responders to the scene, including police, fire, and/or paramedics, is an important step forward. All right, next item is item 5, council, committee, and liaison reports. Do we have any reports? Julie, Matt Salter.
Good evening, fellow council members. I wanted to provide an update on my activities given my absence from the last meeting. Apologies for the lengthy update. On January 13th, I attended the Ross Safe Routes to School Task Force meeting. We discussed developing an overlay map for each school that would be used to guide infrastructure plans and prioritize efforts. Focus areas I suggested to be placed on the map included Sir Francis Drake, specifically creating safe crossings for homes on the east side of the street, calming measures at the Winship intersection, and crosswalk enhancements at the Bolinas intersection. Additionally, we discussed the need for bike signage on Shady Lane. As we finish work on Laurel Grove, I believe we should shift our attention to Sir Francis Drake as our next large Safe Routes project. As I've noted before, the corridor in Ross is dangerous for pedestrians and bikes, especially children. Later in July, I attended the Cal Cities Mayors and Council Members Academy in Sacramento with Council Member Dowling and Town Manager Johnson. The conference provided educational sessions on legal, financial, and ethical topics important for executing our duties as council members. The event also provided an excellent opportunity to network with fellow council members from Marin and across the state on how they are tackling our shared challenges: housing, climate resilience, and budgets. I also attended Cal City's Housing, Community, and Economic Development Policy Committee, where we discussed a new regional economic development framework the governor's office has been working on and will be released in the coming weeks. January 27th was International Holocaust Remembrance Day, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz concentration camp and extermination camp. I moderated on that day a discussion at the Ross School with Holocaust survivor Paul Schwartzbart. Paul shared his harrowing story of being hidden in a Catholic school for 2 years at the height of the war. Of his 60 relatives living in Europe before the war, only 3 members of his family survived and emigrated to America. Paul shared how the United States continues to be a beacon of hope for refugees looking to escape persecution around the world. On Monday of this week, I attended the RPOA meeting on closing our Ross fire station. The room was packed as many concerned Ross residents gathered to voice their concerns. As we are all aware, Los Angeles is just beginning to come to terms with the destruction and devastation of its fires. On a personal note, my aunt and cousins lost their home of 30 years in the Palisades fire. This disaster is a reminder that fire represents a clear and present danger to our community, and it is only getting worse each year. No one would have predicted the fire season would now extend into the winter months. On January 8th, we learned that the Ross Valley Fire Department Board denied our request to delay the closing of our station. Knowing what we know now, I believe closing our station is a mistake, not just for Ross, but for the entire fire district. As the threat of fire grows, we need more engines to protect our citizens and their properties, and not less. In retrospect, I believe the decision to close our station was penny wise, pound foolish. I was not on the council back then, and I believe it is incumbent upon this council to correct that error. To that end, I offer several potential solutions I humbly request my council members evaluate. Number 1, revise our facilities master plan to include the rebuilding of our fire station. The decision to close the fire station was made under false assumptions that response times would be minimally impacted. We now know this is not the case. The reality is our residents and the entire Ross Valley will be negatively impacted by the closure.
Matt, I'm sorry, this really isn't a liaison report. I mean, this is something that should be addressed as an agenda item.
Okay, my suggestions I'll leave towards the end of the
Okay,
session.
thank you. All right, anybody else have any reports? Okay, thank you. All right, so that brings us to the consent. I'm sorry, no, I'm jumping ahead. That was council and committee and liaison reports. Are there any other, pardon me? Yeah, I will, but I just want to make sure I hadn't skipped over anything. All right, so number 6, staff and community reports. First, the town manager Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I have just a few updates for you. So I'm happy to report that the town fared well in our latest rainstorm that began yesterday evening and continues. There were no impacts in terms of downed trees nor significant flooding. The creek got up to about 10.5 feet in the wee hours of the morning, which is high, but not high enough to trigger our action plan, which begins with moving police and fire vehicles to higher ground. I'd like to thank Public Works Department staff, that includes Rich Simonich, Anthony Alcazer, and Zach Baker, for their substantial work to prepare for the storm event. Preparation included bringing in a Vector truck to clean out storm drains in areas that are prone to localized flooding, manually clearing out other storm drains, resupplying the supply of sand for residents to use to create sandbags near the entrance of Natalie Coffin Green Park, drafting messaging for an e-blast to residents, encouraging them to prepare their properties for the storm and to sign up for Alert Marin. And there are other things they did, but those are the things that jump out at me. Anthony and Zach were both on call and were ready to drive into town to handle problems should they arise. So big thanks to our Public Works Director and his team. Thank you. Ross Recreation and the Age-Friendly Ross Task Force hosted its annual Valentine's Luncheon celebration earlier today at Magic, and gosh, it was so special. Despite the rain, it was a lovely and well-attended event. I'd like to thank the task force members and Ross Recreation staff for planning such a fabulous event honoring our seniors. I'd also like to thank the current and former council members that participated today, and the businesses and local organizations that provided support for the event. It's really, really special. And finally, as I reported last month, Public Works staff painted curbs red within 20 feet of marked and unmarked crosswalks throughout town to be in compliance with Assembly Bill 4113, which is known as the daylighting law. AB 413 makes it illegal to park within 20 feet of intersections with sidewalks on both sides. Even if the curb isn't painted red, you still can't park there. Because most of these intersections in the downtown are already restricted, only 2 parking stalls were lost in the downtown commercial area. These parking spaces were located right in front of the post office, and my goodness, did we hear an earful from residents lamenting the loss of those 2 spaces. Staff has identified a few regular parking stalls in the parking lot by the post office that will be converted into 15-minute spaces. However, the conversion cannot occur until later on in the spring when the temperatures warm up, so that the thermoplastic markings to be applied. If you apply it and it's too cold, then it doesn't work. You got to do it all over again. So in the meantime, we hope that residents will focus on the benefits of the daylighting law, which is designed to make it easier to see pedestrians using our crosswalks. So thank you for the opportunity to report.
Yes, thank you. Next, the Ross Property Owners Association. Is anyone here with a report from the RPOA? Or is there anyone online?
Alexandra Hudson.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. Sorry I couldn't be there today, but I'm here to give the RPOA update. We had our meeting on Monday and had special guests, Mayor Kirschner, town council members, Elizabeth Robbins and Matt Seltzer, and really appreciate you guys fielding a Q&A about the closing of the firehouse with our citizens. It was a great attendance, spirited conversation, and really appreciate you guys taking the time. In terms of what our POA is working on right now, looks like Auxiliary will be hosting Spring Fling April 19th. At Age Friendly had their Valentine's luncheon this Thursday at Magic. The next Leadership Council will be March 24th. We're looking into adding more electricity or outlets in the commons so we can do more things like have more holiday lights and make sure that events on the common run more smoothly. The next live on the common will be April 25th, and it's a cover band. I think they're called the Illegals, and they're an Eagles cover band. And then Ross School is going to be doing a global fair on May 2nd. I think it's the first that they'll be doing, so should be great. But that's what we've been up to, and we'll be up to over the next couple months. Thank you.
Very well, thank you very much. Okay, we come next to the consent agenda, and I believe one item has already been removed. That was item D, is that right, Kristen?
Yes, sir, 7E, the quarterly financial report.
I'm sorry, 7E you said, not D?
Yes, 7E is in
All right,
Eisenhower.
okay. Oh, wait a minute, that's way too complicated for me this time of day. All right, so the consent agenda contains items that are normally considered as a single motion, unless any member of the public or the council requests that an item be removed. So item 7E is removed, and so we'll enter, if there are no other requests to remove an item, either from someone present here on the council or in the audience or online, we will entertain a motion. I don't see anyone asking for anything to be removed. So is there a motion for the items 7A through D?
I'll move to approve items 7A through D on the consent agenda.
And a second?
Second. Yeah, I got it. Get closer.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan. Aye. Councilmember Dowling.
Aye.
Mayor Kircher.
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins.
Aye.
Councilmember Salter.
Aye.
All right, with a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, good. So now we will take up item 7E then separately. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Salter asked that this be removed and that I would just give a few highlights. Is that all right, Councilmember Salter, if I do that? Okay. So just a few things. So we bring a financial report to the council every quarter. And this financial report, which is in your agenda packet, concerns the second quarter, 6-month financial summary report. The report shows operating revenues $283,000 over budget and expenses $265,000 under budget, which is resulting in a $548,000 positive variance. However, this variance is not predictive of year-end results due to revenue and spending doesn't occur evenly throughout the year. So more specifically about our operating fund revenues that are $283,000 over the year-to-date budget is our planning revenue is over budget right now. Our building revenue is under budget. And what's really driving this is our interest revenue is well over budget. Our interest revenue is driven by our investments in the LAIF, which is a state treasury account, and we have been receiving 4.62% interest as compared to 4% at the end of the previous year. And that is a lot more information is contained in your other agenda item that you've already approved, which is your quarterly investment report. Operating fund expenses are $265,000 under the year-to-date budget. Again, it's important to note that this is not predictive of year-end results, as much of the variance is due to the timing of the spending. The police department continues to really drive this number and to generate savings in wages and benefits. So we are now fully staffed in the police department, although we do have one officer out on long-term leave right now. But we haven't been staffed this whole year, so that's why we have the savings. There will not be, we are not predicting as much of a year-end savings as we have in years past because we are now fully staffed. The Capital Projects Fund was newly created in fiscal year ending '24. Its purpose is to set aside reserves for the cost of modernizing and rebuilding the Civic Center campus. The fund balance is expected to be about $10 million at the end of this fiscal year. If we did budget $750,000 in this current year budget to be put into a significant project, which is to underground the utilities around the Civic Center. And we we budgeted some money to begin our next steps in the work that needs to be done to have this project move forward. So if those funds are spent as budgeted, at the end of the fiscal year, you'll have $10 million or so in that fund, which is really great to have that savings. So those are the highlights of my report. Thank you.
Great. Council questions? Anyone? Matt?
So I pulled the item because I also wanted to commend the town manager and the town staff for managing our budget so well. I happened to, at the Cal Cities, talk to other peers, and most cities and towns are struggling, as you can imagine, with a lot of shortfalls in their budgets, particularly Fairfax, a neighbor nearby. So it just really wanted to commend the staff for budgeting very well and then keeping to the budget. I was also very pleased to see the Recreation Department, which is one of my favorite because I use it a lot, is beating their budget and doing very well. So thank you for all the work you do, but also thank you for your stewardship of our resources, which are very precious, and having the surplus, especially the interest income on our large capital projects that we're saving for, is important to earn that interest. And I know we're working really hard to earn every dollar we can on that. So again, thank you for the work that you guys do.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I'll join with Matt. Thank you very much. Great job. And Julie?
So I would like to approve agenda item number 7E.
I'll second.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Dowling?
Aye.
Mayor Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Councilmember Salter?
Aye.
Okay, with a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, the next item is item 8, public hearings on planning projects, and specifically item 8A, 200 Lagunitas Road Design Review, a variance and town council adoption of resolution number 2505 approving the budget subject to conditions.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, the applicant at 200 Lagunitas is requesting approval from the town council for design review and a variance. The project is proposing to revitalize the side yard landscape with the addition of a new swimming pool, a spa, pool equipment, artificial turf, a fire pit, patio, outdoor kitchen, retaining walls, plantings, and exterior light fixtures. They're also proposing a 6-foot tall automatic gate and pedestrian gate. A variance is required to construct a pool and patio within the side yard setback. And additionally, the project will widen the existing driveway to 16 feet to be compliant with the Ross Valley Fire Department regulations. On January 21, 2025, with a vote 3-0, the ADR group supported the design of the project as well as the 15-foot setback for the pool. There were no public comments, and staff requests that the town council adopts resolution 2505 for design review and a variance. Thank you.
Any questions from the council of staff? All right, well, thank you. Then I'll open this for public comment. Does anybody wish to be heard on this project? Well, normally we would hear from the applicant first, and then after the applicant has spoken, anyone else. So is there a representative of the applicant here that wishes to be heard?
We have the landscape architect here.
All right, well, thank you for coming here. You have 15 minutes if you wish to use it, but you do not need to take the entire 15 minutes. Thank you.
Yep. My name is Dustin Moore with Strata Landscape Architecture. We've spent quite a bit of time with the ADR on this project and actually worked hand in hand with them to locate the pool and the terrace in the setback. And the site has a lot of limitations. It is a very odd shape. It's actually a star shape. And we're reusing the existing shell of the building. We're trying to be as sensitive as possible to use what we can with the site. And because of that, we're having to locate the pool in the front yard and work a little bit of magic to screen it off so it feels like a rear yard. But because of that, we need to go into the setback. And like I said, we've worked hand in hand with ADR to locate this, to get their approval beforehand to build into the setback. And we've also been working hand in hand with the neighbor, who are also doing a lot line adjustment. We have a lot of support for the project. And if you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard by way of public comment on the project?
No.
All right, well, then, and no one on Zoom. Is that right, Cindy?
There are no raised hands online, Mayor.
Okay, well, then we'll bring it back, close public comment, bring it back to the council for discussion.
I move we approve Resolution 2505. I'll second.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan? Aye. Councilmember Dowling?
Aye.
Mayor Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Councilmember Salter?
Aye.
All right, with a vote of 5, the motion passes.
Okay, so that concludes part 1, that was 8A of planning projects. The next item is item 9, a recommendation that the town council discuss and provide direction to staff regarding the concept of changing the Town of Ross general municipal election from being held on the date of the statewide direct primary election to the November general election date on an ongoing basis. Town Manager Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just give a real brief summary. This item was placed on the agenda at the request of Mayor Kircher and Mayor Pro Tem McMillan. As described in the staff report for this agenda item, between roughly 2006 and 2021, the state of California legislature passed legislation that affected how municipal elections are scheduled. For the town of Ross, this now creates a situation where 2 council seats are elected in June in years when there is no presidential primary, and 3 council seats are elected in March in years where there is a presidential primary. This ongoing change in election dates and staggered council seat expirations creates challenges for the town council's annual reorganization and the selection of the mayor and the mayor pro tem. According to County of Marin Elections Department staff, the town of Ross is the only remaining municipality in Marin County that does not hold its elections in November. Holding elections 5 to 7 months before every other municipality in the county prevents Ross council members from receiving new council member training provided by Cal Cities until 10 months into their term. It also prevents retiring council members from receiving regional recognition for their service and challenges Ross council members that are appointed to regional governing bodies at a different time of the year than their other regionally elected colleagues. That makes sense. So staff requests that the town council discuss available options and provide direction to staff on whether or not to initiate a change to the scheduling of the Ross election. The town council can choose to, 1, maintain the status quo, where you remain on the current election schedule aligned with the statewide primary and alternate between March and June elections in even-numbered years. Please note that the state has made several changes to the primary date, and so if they decide to change the date in the future, that would affect our local municipal elections. Your second choice is to consider a move to the statewide general election in November of even-numbered years. This would require staff to return with a draft ordinance for discussion and possible introduction. The ordinance would outline the way in which council terms would align with the new election date. The staff report for this agenda item describes some potential minor fiscal impacts of moving the local election to November. And then finally, it's recommended that the town council discuss this evening and consider providing direction to staff regarding the concept of changing the Town of Ross general municipal election from being held on the date of the statewide direct primary election to the November general election date on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Questions? This is questions, then we'll have public comment, then we will discuss it, the pros and cons. But are there any questions about this? It seems fairly straightforward what the proposal is, but any council member have questions? Yes, Matt.
I was wondering, is this something the town manager you brought to us, or was this brought by the council members?
Yeah, we agreed to put it on the calendar for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions? All right. Let's see, I guess we should have public comment on this, right? It's an action item in the sense that we're going to provide direction, or we're requested to provide direction. So is there does any member of the public wish to be heard on this item? All right, seeing no one, at least in the chambers here, is there anyone, I'm sorry, in the town hall here, is there anyone online?
There are no raised hands online.
Okay, fine. Well, then we can bring it back to the council for discussion.
Well, okay.
I'm sorry. Did you want to go ahead, Elizabeth?
Sure. My position is I would stick with the status quo. I think that a charming feature of the way our town is governed is that the mayor and the mayor pro tem are chosen, and then shortly after, they're introduced to the town at the July 4 parade. It's very special to be mayor and mayor pro tem, and it's special to lead the parade and to be the master of ceremonies at the July 4 event. If the mayor is not chosen until after November, then the term is more than half over before the parade and before the mayor gets sort of formally introduced to the town. So for this reason alone, I would keep the status quo. I think it's a wonderful tradition that the new mayor gets introduced to the town and leads the July 4 celebration. But as far as some of the reasons mentioned to change the election date, I don't think that they're all that compelling. As far as end of service recognition, I mean, I don't think that anyone decides to serve on the council to get recognition at the end. And if you do, you can always say that your last meeting is coming up so that your board or committee could recognize you. Regarding board appointments, I don't think it's ever been a problem that Ross's representation on the regional boards changes at a different time from the other jurisdictions. In fact, it might be a benefit for Ross and the board. By not changing in November, we provide continuity when the other board members are changing. Will it complicate efforts to choose a mayor? A spring election and a November election are essentially the same. There's always a mayor pro tem in waiting. There's a rotation system, including the newcomers, whoever received the highest number of votes that's been in place for a long time. So even in years with a June election bumping right up against the parade, I think that the mayor selection could likely still be done in time for the parade. Does it matter that the Cal Cities training occurs partway through the new council member's term? I don't think so. I mean, it may be helpful to have been a council member for 6 months before you go to the Cal Cities training. You might get more out of it. Would there be more interest in council elections if they're held in November? I think that our council elections would get lost if they're held in November. There's so many other things on the ballot in November that I think that our council members would be less, there'd be less focus on them. I think that people are probably less likely to go to a candidates night for the council if there are already 2 or 3 other candidates nights for school board members or for high school board members or any other group. So for all of these reasons, I would hope that we stay the course, keep the elections in the spring, which I think works really well. I don't see that there's anything broken that needs to be fixed. And spring elections has the huge advantage of having the newly chosen mayor get introduced to the town on July 4 at the beginning of the term of that person's mayorship. And I think that's a great tradition.
Julie.
You know, not to hurt anyone's feelings or anything, but no one pays attention to the new mayor or the mayor pro tem at the 4th of July parade. Sorry, Bill. No one listened to you.
They were waiting.
I
They
listened,
were all
but no one
waving at
else
me, Ju-
listened.
It's a big deal.
Sorry.
Well,
And
then
when
why
I
am
was
I
mayor,
here? I
no
don't
one, when I
understand.
was mayor, no one listened to me either. And if the election is in June, the results aren't even going to be certified potentially until after the 4th of July parade. So that reason kind of goes out the window. I think to be the only jurisdiction in Marin of the 11 cities and towns to have our election either in March or June makes no sense. Very, very difficult if we're the Lone Ranger to get any kind of attention from the IJ or other endorsing entities. And I respect, Elizabeth, that you like tradition and you don't like change, but I think this is just a remnant when many, many other jurisdictions had springtime elections and were the last one standing. So I think we need to conform. I think it's also really important for the newly elected council members to go to Sacramento and get the training that's necessary instead of waiting for 10 months or 6 months. And on JPA boards that I have been a part of, a kind of a new class comes in January, and they all bond together, and they all get trained together, and they all onboard together. And for Ross to, be an outlier, I think it's awkward and difficult, and to be the only person transitioning that way. So for those reasons, I think that we should give the town manager guidance to bring back an ordinance to make our election in November consistent with everyone else.
I agree. I think it's difficult for us to be the outlier. I would like to see us consistent with the other 10 cities and towns. I think it's easier in general. I think you're right about the training and being some new people being appointed to county, like the TAM. It's difficult when the others do come in, and then there's a training for the others and you haven't had it. So because of that, I think I would agree with you. So, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, so we have 2 new council members. So we've both been, Terry and myself had to go through this. And first of all, I appreciate you guys bringing this up. I think it would have been nice, I agree with you, to have some collegial kind of others going through the process. But the one point I'm sort of stuck on is I do agree with Councilmember Robbins that having our election in the spring without the noise of so many other things in November, I think was really helpful. I think we did get more attention actually from the IJ. We spent a lot of time, they had endorsements, and there wasn't a lot of other elections going on to sort of, create a lot of noise around our election. So that's the only part, because November is there's so many things on the ballot every year. Ballot measures, the presidential, federal, city, county. So it's a lot. And I would really want our residents to sort of, I don't think they pay attention enough as it is, of course. But it does give a little bit of a more of an open window to really focus on town issues, town problems, and really want to understand what our council's doing and why somebody wants to join it. So I'm just in the middle on it. The other part is I don't know that it's so broken, but being new, I definitely would have appreciated joining the class. I completely agree with Councilmember Dowling. It'd be nice to be with a cohort, but I definitely liked that we had our election and it was was the big thing happening where there wasn't a lot of distraction. So I'm in the middle on it.
Well, I do think it makes sense. We've been kind of out of alignment here because our procedures say that the mayor serves for a year. And yet, 1 year, we have an election in March, and 2 years later, it's in June. So that throws us off right away. Somebody's going to serve for a year, and somebody's going to serve for 15 months. And that's kind of awkward. Of course, if we change, then somebody's going to serve for even more than 15 months. I'm going to support this. I have to tell you, I'm worn out already. I'm not committing to serve for more than a year, which poor Julie, you know, she's worked so hard for the town, and I hate to do this to her, but that's my word on it. I'm not agreeing to serve for longer than a year. Otherwise, I would support it. I hear what Elizabeth's saying, and it is one of those things that makes Ross special, but it's just awkward. You know, that our whole procedures are set up in the expectation that in July, we're going to have this changeover because we used to have the primary in June. But it doesn't work when the election is in March because there's this gap. So we're not choosing the mayor in July. So even our procedures manual doesn't make sense. If we go to November, it would all be consistent. It would make sense.
Well, so going back to that and the procedures manual and the term of the mayor, I would say if the council wants to change the election date, thinking of the term of the mayor, I think we might consider modifying the terms of the mayor and the mayor pro tem so that we do match the procedures manual, which is a year. I mean, I'm not sure that anyone should be serving for mayor or mayor pro tem for longer than a year. I don't think it quite looks right for us to vote longer terms for ourselves.
But it would only be for that one transitional
Well,
year.
let me finish what I'm going.
I'm sorry.
I have a very novel proposition. So my suggestion is that we adjust the mayor and the mayor pro tem terms so that we actually have an interim term that's shorter than a year leading up to the November 2026 election. So it looked like this. We keep the existing mayor rotation, so that's Bill, Julie, me, Terry, Matt. We keep the April date to select the mayor and mayor pro tem this year. That means Julie would become mayor, I would become mayor pro tem. We keep the April date to select the mayor and mayor pro tem next year. That would mean that I'm the mayor and Terry is the mayor pro tem, starting in April 2026. Then, after the delayed election in November 2026, we select the next mayor and mayor pro tem. That would be Terry and Matt, and then revert back to one-year terms. I plan to run again, but even if I'm reelected, I would step down as mayor in November 2026 so that I would have a shorter term. Nobody would have a longer term. Terry would become mayor for a full year starting November 26, and Matt, mayor pro tem. And then Matt would be chosen as mayor based on our rotation in November 27. And it has the advantage that Matt then can be mayor for a year during his first 4 years as a council member. So it's kind of a novel and different approach, but it sticks to the procedures manual that we're elected to mayor as a year. It doesn't look like we're voting something special for ourselves. And it's just an interesting way of approaching this change to make it kind of even for everybody.
I'd like to consider that, but I'd like to look at what other jurisdictions have done, because I know when Corte Madera and Belvedere did this transition, they had the mayor serve for 18 months, and then everyone was on the same schedule. I don't want to be mayor for 18 months. I'm not doing this as a power grab. This is not the intent behind making this change, but I think we could get some insight based on how the other jurisdictions have transitioned with their mayorship before we make a decision. But I think for right now, we should give staff guidance to bring back an ordinance, just talking about when our election is going to be, and then we can work out the scheduling of the mayor stuff down the road.
Because I think, I mean, I know the procedures manual lets us choose a mayor anytime. So if you don't want to be mayor for 18 months, I mean, I can
I'm not saying
happily
I
step in
don't
for
want to
6
be,
months.
I don't want to be mayor for 18 months. I'm just saying that that's, changing the election date is not, to make me mayor, that's not my motivation for changing the election date by any stretch of the imagination. So I think we should have that discussion down the road, but right now, we're here to give the staff guidance about an ordinance to change the election date to November, and I think that's what we should do.
Agree. Yes, Kristen.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of the important things that the ordinance would do would be to talk about what do you do with the terms? So, and that's something I'm going to have to work closely with our town attorney on, because I'm not sure, there might be options for the council, or I'm not sure. So that's a very important part of this.
Interesting.
I think the town attorney might.
Microphone. Yeah, there's options under the government code that sets up this change, and I haven't looked at those for several years since all the cities did it several years ago. But obviously, no one's term becomes smaller, and then the option is how do you account for the extended term for the council members during the transition? So that would be in your staff report when this comes before you next, if you decide to move forward on this.
Yes, if you could address that, what adjustments would we have to make since we were elected to fixed terms?
Right.
And
There's a decision on
it's,
that.
they're staggered, but as to those whose terms are ending, are they still council members or not? I think they are. I think they continue until a successor is certified, but I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
the code's very clear what happens. I just have to bring that forward in
Okay.
the next staff report.
So what I would like to suggest is, I think before we vote to have an ordinance, we should get all of this ironed out.
Yeah.
So it's like, what happens with the terms? What is the best process for the mayorship and the mayor pro tem, and then bring it back? Because I hear you, Julie, if we just say, create the ordinance, but there's all these cascading effects of that ordinance. And I don't think I want to vote on that ordinance till I know what those cascading effects are. So it'd be nice to just bring a staff report and say, here's the plan, here's how we think we'd implement this.
Well, I mean, right now, we're giving direction to staff, as I understand it, to draft an ordinance. That's the limited thing we're doing. But Matt, you're saying you would like to also resolve the other issue at the same time, or before you're ready to vote on the?
I think we should resolve the other issues, because this has a cascading effect on, okay, if they bring back the ordinance, then how do we sort out the mayorship, the pro tem, and then the terms? Because both Terry and I were spring, so does that mean all of us are spring? Okay,
No.
so then do we have to all be on, our terms will all get extended to November? So obviously, we all want to think about that. And I think Councilmember Robbins brings up a good point of just how do you want to stagger these terms so nobody feels taxed by being mayor for too long or too less. So I think it's just, there's a lot of effects here, and staff report doesn't really get into all that. So it's a little hard to just say, let's do this ordinance without knowing those things.
Well, maybe you could work on an ordinance, and then in the staff report, you could have various options for the terms, like Elizabeth suggested, or alternatives. And that way we could move it forward.
So there's an opportunity to make changes between first reading introduction and second reading adoption, but they can't be substantial. So, and because there is a cost associated with, publishing and the notices for the ordinance, that I'm, and we do have time, I'm fine with bringing this back as kind of a concept again, and talk a little bit more about this. I'm just saying, we could do that.
It's a good idea.
Or,
I would rather that you bring back a draft ordinance that I would assume that it's not going to detail, when the mayor starts, when the mayor pro tem starts, et cetera. But that could be something in the staff report that we could discuss at that time when we review the ordinance. I don't think we need to have this conversation again.
Wait, but I thought you said the ordinance would include that. If it
It's my
does, I think we should
understanding
have
that,
another-
I'm not sure the ordinance includes the mayor,
The terms of mayor and mayor pro tem?
the whole mayor and mayor pro tem issue, but it would include, for example, the three of you that were elected in March. It sounds like you can't have a shorter time, so therefore you're going to be adding 8 months onto your term. But maybe there's another option that I'm unaware of, I need to work with Ben on. And so if there are options, I'm not sure if we bring them forward in an ordinance, if you can change, if making a change from what we put and publish in an ordinance, it wouldn't be substantive or not. You know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at, Ben?
Yes. I
Thank
think- So what we've done in our other cities is you have an ordinance, draft ordinance before you with a couple options that you will discuss at that first reading. And whether, there'll be an option of how to handle the terms. And then you plug that into the first reading, you come to a consensus of what it should be, and you do a first read on that basis. What's not covered in that ordinance is our rules and procedures of electing the mayor. So you can direct staff today, if you'd like, to also include that in the agenda item for, when we bring the ordinance forward, or not. But that's a separate issue. That's not part of the ordinance.
Okay, then the way that the town attorney described it, where if we can bring forward options, then, and with a draft ordinance, then we can do that.
Is that right? Any further
It's
comment?
what you
or
decide.
Is that acceptable? All right. Then, shall we vote on this then? Because we're giving direction to, it's just a discussion. All right. Very good. Then we have, we're going on to item 10.
Do we need any public comment?
Do we need public comment, Ben, where we're having a discussion? I'm happy to open it to public comment.
In public comment, and I
We do.
thought we did, but maybe we didn't, and maybe I missed it.
You did it.
Yeah,
We
you
did?
Yeah.
That's right, and then we brought it back to the council. Okay, that's okay, Matt, I'm always forgetting about public comment, so I appreciate it. Yeah, it's not late, but it seems like it's late. Okay. Item 10, council to receive an update regarding the implementation of the adopted 5-year capital improvement plan, CIP, and discuss any desired changes or additions to the CIP for the upcoming fiscal year. And then, based on discussion, a final draft version of the CIP will be included for consideration in the fiscal 2025-2026 fiscal year budget discussions.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just going to provide a little short introduction. So this item was requested by Councilmember Salter and Robbins
Yes,
last fall, I believed. We had planned to do it last month, and one of the council members was not here. So Rich has taken the lead on putting together a good presentation, and we want to make sure we allow for plenty of time for the council to have a discussion about this and to provide direction if you so choose. So please, Rich, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Manager, and thank you, Mayor and council members. So tonight, we are going to take a look at the process of developing a 5-year capital improvement program, go over some of the projects that we have completed, going to look at some projects that we are looking at approaching over the next 4 or 5 years, look at the funding process for these projects, and we can have an opportunity for council to comment on what we're looking at and ask, and the funding process itself. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation prepared, and I will move forward here. So first, we want to look at the town goals and how the CIP influences the town goals that we have adopted. So mainly, the CIP addresses the sustaining of the financial responsibility and stability through our managing of the various funding streams that create these projects. Maintain a safe community and improve emergency preparedness. A lot of our capital improvement programs, projects do address the safety of the community and emergency preparedness. And maintain and improve, of course, the infrastructure and facilities of the town. The purpose and function of a CIP, we identify the improvements in expenses and revenues through the next 5 years. And we update the CIP forecast as part of the annual budget process that we're going to be entering into here within the next few months, culminating in the adoption of the budget in June. It's also a planning tool to track and forecast the funding for facilities and infrastructure improvements. We have a fairly regular stream of revenue to fund these projects. There is a few elements that are variable, and we do need to make sure we're not overloading our capital projects beyond what the ability to fund those projects. And it is a dynamic document that changes from year to year as the priorities and needs and fundings change. Implementing the CIP does have several constraints that need to be considered by the Public Works Director and staff. The first one, engineering staff commitments. Internally within the town, is basically just me as far as developing the scopes for the project. You know, we want to do, let's say, the Allen Avenue pathway. Well, what does that look like, and how do we accommodate parking, and how do we accommodate the needs of the students, and as well as emergency access vehicles? All of those things, I work with the consultants to develop the scope of each project to make sure they're meeting the goals and values of the town with respect to those certain projects. We have to look at available funding for drainage and roadway projects. And we have to schedule the timing of each project with respect to the other capital projects that we're looking at through the CIP process. Future public utility projects, PG&E has a gas line that they want to put in somewhere, and Ross Valley has a sewer line that they're upgrading, and Marin Municipal Water District had their fire upgrades, and we have to coordinate our projects with those utility companies. We do that every year. We kind of tell them what we're planning to do, and then they tell us what they're planning to do on an annual basis, and we're able to coordinate that, but that has to be represented within the framework of the capital projects. Another constraint is the grant funding when they call for projects. Like the Safe Routes is every 4 years, so we kind of look at that as far as what our next Safe Routes project will look like, and when that can be implemented with respect to when that grant funding becomes available. And environmental restrictions, we have the spotted owl nesting and the raptor nesting towards September, October, November. We have to have our projects completed before that time, or wait until that nesting period is over. Of course, we have the rains and the weather elements. And all of that has to be taken into account of how much we can do each year during the building season, which unfortunately, the building season always spans one fiscal year over into the next. So trying to say this is what we're going to do in 2026 could mean fiscal year 26, 27, or 25, 26. So that's not important, but it is something to consider as I go through the presentation tonight. So look at the projects we've completed in the last 5 years. Always interesting to see the history here. All the way back to 2020, where we did the couple paving projects, Thomas Court. We did the irrigation well rehab. We installed the town hall video here and put in the Natalie Coffin Green Park fountain and the porta potty enclosures at Frederick Allen Park and Natalie Coffin Green Park. And then the next year, we did the parking lot paving and the EV stations. Ross Common paving and some drainage projects over on Bolinas Avenue. Then we moved on. We did the common pathway rehabilitation. That worked out really great. Back in 22-23, we repaved Fern Hill. Moving on to 23-24, we did the Laurel Grove Phase 2A, that first section of the pathway after Marin Art and Gardens Center. couple drainage projects on Shady Lane and El Camino Bueno, and the first phase of the Shady Lane pathway. And then just this year, we finished up the Laurel Grove Phase 2B and the second portion of the Shady Lane pathway. So these are capital projects that generally are defined, I would think, that about $60,000, $75,000 all the way up to $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 projects that we need to come to council for approval for the expenditure. They're the larger projects. So this doesn't, we're not really talking tonight about the smaller, maybe the small ADA projects that we do around town. This parking lot project we did right here at Town Hall, it's kind of wasn't a capital project, but so it's a little bit gray about what is a capital project and what is just kind of a maintenance type project. So looking ahead to the 5-year capital projects, this year we want to get the Natalie Coffin Green Park bridges completed up at the park. Those are, we're about ready to go out to bid. There's about a 6-month lead on ordering those bridges, so we're gonna bid the project, get a contract, and there's gonna be like 6 months before the project gets built later this year. And we are constrained by the nesting of, there's actually a pair of spotted owls up there by Natalie Coffin Green Park, so we had to coordinate the timing with that. The Allen Avenue Pathway project, we are very close to, I think I want to, next month, present a couple of options for that and get that built this year. The Civic Center site, we need to come up with a project so we can enter into CEQA, and we can't do that without a project description. So maybe we'll start getting some consultants together to start working on that project, but there's really nothing we can do until we get over a couple of those hurdles that you all know about to move forward with an accurate project description. And then there's the Bolinas Drain Phase 2. That's a pretty big project. It'll be rather disruptive. It's tearing open the street on the west side of Sir Francis Drake between Bolinas and the Sir Francis Drake Bridge. It's a big project, and it's going to provide some additional benefit to the Bolinas and Fern Hill area as far as drainage is concerned. We move on to next year. We're hoping to move forward with Phase 3A of Laurel Grove. That is, we are looking at some Safe Routes grant funding to come in for that, and as well as the Allen Avenue Pathway project and the Shady Lane Pathway and Sharrows project. I didn't want to, we could do those projects without the grant funding, but I think it's a part of the decision process to move forward with those projects if we do get the Safe Routes funding. We'll know more about that, I think, by the time we go into the budget process in May and June about getting those awards. We have the Civic Center Rule 20A undergrounding project. Maybe a little wishful thinking of getting that going in 2027. That's a very complex project, even though it's only 4 or 5 poles around here. There's we do have a consultant that we're looking at awarding a contract to at next council meeting to get moving on that. But that's a big project. That's about 3 years ago it was at 1.2 million. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets up to about 1.5 or 1.6, but we'll need to see how those bids come in. The Winship Bridge project, so that's been a continual project, as you know, since we started that in 2013, long before I got here. That's a big commitment of my time. It's kind of in spurts. There's a few months where I need to really work with the consultants to move that project through NEPA, and then there's 6 months while Caltrans reviews the documents, and right now we're at the very end of the NEPA phase, I believe. Caltrans is saying we should be able to move into the right-of-way portion by the end of this year, and that's going to bring a big commitment of my time as we work with property negotiations on acquiring easements and right-of-way to build a new bridge. Moving into fiscal year 2028, we're hoping to have completed the design of the Civic Center site, and we can maybe start moving into construction. I think we're still going to be in the design phase, but that's a big commitment of my time and Roberta's time in the planning department as we move through the design of that project before we even get to construction. Hopefully, then we can finish up the Laurel Grove project in 2028 with the final phase being 3B. Moving on to 2029, if we keep on schedule, continue into the construction phase of the Civic Center site. Big expenditures there, as you all know. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then on to fiscal year 2030. Well, that's when we can start thinking about what else we want to do. The Ross Common playfield, anything you want to think about and let staff know something what we can look into looking down the road. And very quickly, the paving projects over the 5-year. So we are looking at, based on direction from the council previously, we are looking at repaving and restriping Sir Francis Drake Boulevard between Bolinas and El Camino Bueno. I do have a consultant lined up, and we're going to go hopefully approve that contract at the next council meeting to move forward on the design of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, and we'll have an opportunity to work with staff on developing some safety elements, additional signing, striping, that sort of thing. It's not going to be the whole, we're not going to look at installing a new traffic light or crosswalks or things like that. That's for another time. I think we want to get this repaved and get in the modern standards of striping there at Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. We're going to do the Allen Avenue and Ped Path, as I mentioned earlier, and we need to repave Morrison Road. It's under complete failure as far as pavement condition is concerned. So I've been promising those people up there that we would get Morrison Road paved, so we want to do that. Moving to 2027, we're looking hopefully again the Laurel Grove Safe Routes, at Duke Canyon Road and Walters Road along in that same basic area. And then moving on to other roadway projects as we move through. And these are all based on pavement condition index that we, every 2 years, we evaluate, hire a consultant to evaluate our pavement condition, and as well as looking at public utility projects and other projects that may shuffle this schedule around. Invariably, 1 or 2 projects do get shuffled based on the certain constraints that I talked about earlier. So major projects looking ahead to the 5-year. So we have the Bolinas Drain, the Phase 2. We have the Winship Bridge replacement. Now, when that happens, these are all projects that are going to be major commitments of my time. Even, of course, we're going to have consultants, we're going to have project managers, both. And when we get into the Civic Center redevelopment, that's going to be both planning and public works are going to be heavily involved in that process. What's not mentioned here is the West Ross Underground Utility District. That's mainly because we have one more vote coming up, the vote of the property owners within the district to move forward with construction. That should be coming up within 2 or 3 months. Every time PG&E says we're almost there, then they come up with something new. So that project's been kind of slipping, but I see that going into bid and construction, or bid and the balloting sometime this year. So while that is funded by a bond measure, it's not really funded by the roadway fund or the general fund per se, that is going to be a huge commitment in the Public Works Director's time to manage that project, but we don't even know if that's even going to happen. So it's somewhere within these 5 major projects, that project's going to have to fit in as well. It's a little bit about the CIP funding. The roadways are funded by road impact fees, the TAM Measure A, and AA, including that includes the Safe Routes to School grants when they come, state gas tax, road maintenance and rehab account. all of these, except for the road impact fees, are fairly steady. We know 3-4 years out what gas tax is going to look like and what the RMRA is going to look like, and we know what the Measure AA stuff is going to look like. Road impact fees seems to vary between $120,000 or $130,000 a year up to $200,000. Last year we had almost $400,000 in road impact fees. We have a lot of road projects. We can easily spend that in 1 year. But this year we're only about 56% of where we were last year as far as road impact fees. So I need to kind of readjust the funding elements of the CIP when we bring it forward to you in June. Drainage is pretty much the same. Drainage, we only have the drainage impact fees, which are identical to the road impact fees. They're both 1% of the valuation of building permits that come through the town. So they're exactly the same amount year to year. And so we are experiencing a drop this year in the drainage impact fees, something we have to watch. We still have, I'm basing this off the December financials, so we'll see how it develops. There might be big permits that come in between now and June, and we're back on track with those impact fees. But we have to watch those closely and schedule projects in the future according to how those fluctuate. Flood Zone 9, we did get a little money from them several years back, but that's ending. And we have the Federal Highway Bridge Program funding the Winship Bridge. We recently got another big influx of funding for that to get us through the NEPA process. We're going to have to go back for a little bit more money. Hopefully there will be federal funding available for us on that. You never know, but right now it still looks pretty good there. And Caltrans has actually moved the Winship Bridge up to a priority project for us. I've been complaining to them so much that that director actually called me and said, "Listen, Richard, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll get this project going." And then the facilities capitals projects. Well, that's another discussion. We're going to talk about that just a little bit coming up, based what contributions, grants, and transfers from the operating fund. So this is kind of an eye-opener diagram. This is a graph of the capital improvement program funding. You see the two smaller lines along the bottom. That's the roadway and drainage fund expenditures. Expenditures more or less are exceeding the income for the roadway and drainage fund, but we're managing it. It's staying, within the million down to maybe 250,000 range. So that's a fun to watch. So it's a fun to watch. The other one, the line at the top, that's our capital fund. We're up there at around 10 million. It might get a little bit higher. But as soon as we get into CEQA, we hire an environmental consultant, then we start getting into design, and by the time we're ready to go to bid and get construction, that fund's going to be down to maybe $6 million. That'll probably fund what? We don't even know what the costs have escalated in the past 3 years. So we have a deficit there that we need to start thinking about filling. And by the time we get into construction, we're going to need to know how we're going to fund that project. And we talked about this already a little bit. This is the pavement rehabilitation program over the next 5 years. And trying to estimate costs with year-to-year cost escalations is a little bit challenging, but as you can see, we've been managing the roadway and drainage fund pretty well. And then the facilities challenge is, of course, the historically deferred maintenance of town buildings and facilities over the past, several decades. Functionally obsolete, as we all know, big dollar cost of rebuilding the facilities, and the funding challenges, which is all open for discussion. We could talk a little bit about that tonight. And so looking at the facilities funding opportunities, the annual funding from the town's operating fund, we've been doing really well over the past few years, got up to 10 million. I think we're going to be maybe a little bit higher. We'll see in June. And then under other funding sources to be reviewed in order to fill that gap, close that gap of funding, is additional funds from the operating fund. Start looking at grant opportunities, partnering, relationships, donations, and, dare I say it, debt financing. So that concludes my report. And I'm open to questions and comments on some of the projects we presented or some of your ideas for capital projects in the future. Thank you.
I'll start with the questions.
My dinner, I'm sorry, I'm starving, okay.
So thank
Man.
you, Rich, for such a nice slide deck and the report. I was curious, just when you mentioned Sir Francis Drake, could you talk a little bit, I was, like I mentioned in my report, the Safe Routes money obviously could be available to help improve Sir Francis Drake in terms of safety for for people who live on it, especially on the east side of the street where they have no crosswalk and no sidewalk. So I know you want to repave it and get the right striping. I hear you. But is there any way we could use the Safe Routes money to try to turn it into a bigger project?
So, great question. So the cycling of the Safe Routes to School funding through TAM Measure AA is like every 4 years. And we've just entered into this, the current cycle, and the town submitted 4 grant applications for 4 projects that we've all been talking about: the Shady Lane, Sharrow's Pathway, the Allen Avenue Pathway is another one, and then Laurel Grove Phase 2A, and then Laurel Grove Phase 2B. They're each $100,000 grant funding. So that's a done deal. We can't change that. So I would venture that in the 4-year cycle, 3 years from now, we start talking about how we want to pursue the next round of Safe Routes grant funding. It's really not that, it's not nothing we can really forecast, I think, at this point. But again, the project is going to introduce Caltrans made the edge striping and the centerline striping a lot wider. It becomes a lot more visible. All of the reflectors that go in the center, those are all either destroyed or pushed down into the pavement. But we will present the design to council before we go to bid and get some ideas on what sort of striping, pavement markers, that Dave Parisi and his group did come up with some ideas in lieu of a traffic signal at that location, putting the speed limit markers on the pavement and putting in additional signage about the S-turn and things like that. Hopefully that answers your question. As we're a little bit limited, but the pavement's falling apart and the striping is obsolete or destroyed. And the signage could be upgraded with the speed limit, those solar-powered speed limit signs and that sort of thing.
Okay, so basically the Safe Routes, we'd have to wait for another cycle, so I get that. The only other issue there that we've talked about in the past is when the Winship Bridge gets taken out, there has to be some mitigating factors for people who live in Winship, how they get over to school. I mean, or just across Sir Francis Drake, because they won't be able to go to Bolinas. So I know this is add some factors here, but that's why I was presenting this as like a package, because if the town is gonna, I'm sure as a part of the plan, have to have a way for kids to get to school. So I don't know, I know I'm not asking you to have the plan right now, but I do think that it sort of combines with some of these safety elements.
Right. Well, the plan is that the kids will have to walk down Winship Avenue to Sir Francis Drake and walk along the sidewalk there. What we can make sure that is a safe, we can spend accessibility money on making sure that sidewalk is safe and.
Wait, I'm sorry, which sidewalk?
the sidewalk where between Winship Avenue, the south intersection of Winship Avenue, going back towards Bolinas. So they're gonna have to walk down Winship and then up over the Sir Francis Drake Bridge, back up to Bolinas to get to that
Oh, yeah,
crosswalk.
there's no sidewalk there. There's no way, just so you know, Rich, because I live there, you come down Winship and the sidewalk stops and there's no crosswalk to cross Sir Francis Drake and there's no sidewalk to go up Sir Francis Drake. And as you know, it's a very dangerous place to have a kid walk anyway, but there is no sidewalk.
I think we're talking about two different things, council member.
Okay.
So when you walk down Winship past the Breckus house, and then you continue in that sidewalk, you walk north towards Bolinas Avenue, you're staying on that side of the road. There's a sidewalk there that passes Elizabeth Breckus, and there's a sidewalk on the bridge, and you continue on where you cross Winship at the Winship Bridge. That needs a lot of work to put in accessible ramps and a crosswalk there, and that'll be related to the bridge improvements. And then you get to the crosswalk at Bolinas. So yeah, they're gonna have to walk a little bit further, but that's the plan for while the Winship Bridge, which is being constructed in the summer mostly, that's kind of the idea there.
Okay, thank you.
Richard, thank you so much. I appreciated the graphs and the charts. It was very helpful. Looking at the 5 years, over the 5 years, I can't imagine, even given the fact that we're going to have to redo Sir Francis Drake in front of us, that we could add anything to the CIP. It seems pretty loaded as it is. And I know you don't have a lot of staff. So I just appreciate all the work that you do. And I think the CIP has been written now for, what, was a year ago? I think you got a lot of work ahead of you. I commend you.
Julie?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was listening to all the stuff that's on your plate and thinking, well, we need to clone you or something, because you have a lot of projects between now and, what, 20, whenever. You have a lot of projects.
Yeah.
So thank you for working so hard to kind of juggle all this stuff at the same time.
You're welcome. I think it's doable.
I like that answer.
I have a question, Rich. Back to the Winship Bridge, you mentioned something about doing work in the summer. I mean, realistically, once they really get going on the construction, how long do you think that will go on?
The consultants think they can do it in one season, which would be, that would have to probably start around April, so there would be some impacts to school, and then finish up around September. So it's going to be like 6 or 7 months of continuous construction in that area. And depending on when it starts, it could span 2 fiscal years, or we may be able to do it in one. But they consider about six or 7 months of construction. And the first thing that needs to happen is Ross Valley Sanitation District has to come in and realign their sewer, which is currently within the bridge. They're going to have to directional drill a portion of it under the creek bank. So they're asking me, they just recently asked me, so when's it going to happen? Because they're doing their 10-year CIP. And this is part of their CIP, is relocating this sewer line. So they weren't very happy with every year I tell them, well, maybe next year, but that should go fairly quickly, but that's kind of part of the 7-month process, but that'll be the first thing that happens. And then we'd move forward on the bridge. I think we'd have to demo the bridge a few months before school gets out. So there will be that impact, but we'll, hopefully that we'll have that covered sufficiently so that there's not too much impact on the kids trying to walk to school. But Matt Salter's right, or Councilmember Salter's right, there's no way for them to walk to Ross School in that direction. They have to backtrack up towards Bolinas and cross that way.
Yeah, it does sound like doing as much as you can when school is out to minimize that impact. But obviously, there's going to be some carryover and a lot of noise and a lot of big equipment, apparently. All right, anyone else have questions? No, okay, so this was a presentation. Should we have public comment too, I think? So let's open this for public comment then. Does anybody wish to be heard on the capital improvement program subject? All right, is there anyone online?
There are no raised hands online, Mayor.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Town
wait, so
Manager
can we-
Johnson?
Aside from questions, I thought we could discuss some
Oh, I'm sorry,
ideas
yeah, I opened it for public comment. I should bring it back now for discussion. You're completely right. Discussion.
So I wanted to add to the list, first of all, I know it's a shuffle, and I know you say you're going to retire, so you have to give us a lot of notice, Rich, before that happens. One of the items I'd like us to add is the Ross Common issue that has been brought up with the field and the drainage. And I remember Director Simonich bringing up that maybe there might be a project just even in the drainage part where the flooding is occurring in that one corner because the grates or there's some issue with it being backed up. But just this field or this drainage or just trying to make the field more accessible and available for the residents and the students would be, I think, a really nice project whenever you can slot it in, if the council members agree. And one other issue I wanted to bring to the council was the undergrounding. So from what I met with the West Ross undergrounding district, and it's very impressive what they put together, but it sounds like this ends up being a town project. And so what I'm wondering is whether this is something, given the fires and some of the discussions we have, if it's something we should try to fold in, not obviously tomorrow, but whether we should sort of take the lead on, hey, how do we, this is maybe the first big project in the town, but it's something the town can lead on, undergrounding districts, as opposed to making all the townspeople create their own districts and have to go through this process. So I just bring that to the council because I did not realize that the town was going to have to raise the funds, issue a bond, and then also take over the project management of it. So it's a lot on the town. So if we're going to have to do that anyway, I wonder if we should sort of forecast forward, because I know other districts are trying to form. And so it might be something where we're leading the sort of effort on phase one is this West Ross, but then we sort of create a plan for 10 years out or whatever of trying to create a path for everyone to get undergrounded. So those are my two.
For the common, Richard, you said that it's within the realm of possibility to fix that drainage issue in the corner. Is that something that's doable? I mean, that's the biggest problem with the common right now, right? I mean, short of redoing the whole thing, if that was addressed, it would be mostly functional, is that right? Is that, I know we talked about that a little bit. I remember you said you can't really use the drainage fund for it, even though it sounds like it's drainage, but how bad is that corner, and how likely is it that it could be repaired and made more usable?
As we've all seen, if we walked out during the rain, it does get pretty well flooded there. So yes, in that respect, it's bad. But the solution's very easy, and the solution is, when I mentioned the drainage fund, it's really kind of a small drainage project, something incidental that would probably be less than any contract we'd need to even bring to the council. It'd be cleaning out, we already did have cleaned out the pipes that drain into Little Murphy Creek back there, but maybe installing another catch basin there. My comment was not intended to say, hey, we can fix a catch basin and then lay down a bunch of turf too. It's just to resolve the standing water problem there, which is a very simple, small drainage project.
Great, so that's something that you're able to go forward with?
Yeah, I'm thinking,
great.
maybe it's something we could do this summer. We've already, Anthony and Zach were able to clear out that one inlet, and we actually purchased a new pipe cleaning router thing, and they cleaned that out all the way to the creek. And they haven't seen that outlet since they've worked here. So we do have that, with just a few hours' work, we've addressed most of the problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, and sorry, so just the issue, obviously, the drainage is the most acute, but the big project that was discussed was with RPOA, it was how to fix the field. And
Yes.
obviously, the school has a part in this because of the school's construction, so that's the sort of bigger project that I was mentioning.
Can I just ask a question about, Matt, what you mean by the town kind of spearheading these underground districts? Because I'm not sure we're equipped to do that. I think the genesis needs to come from the residents, and then once there's certain things done, then the staff assists. So I'm just wondering what you're thinking.
So what I was thinking was, it ends up, you're right, the district gets created, everyone votes, but then it becomes a town project and the town actually has to float a bond to, it's backed by the district paying more for taxes, but still the town will have to float this bond and then we'll have to lead the whole project. So what I was bringing to the council was why not, if these districts are starting to being formed and they're very difficult on the residents to have to do them all on their own, is why not the town sort of create a plan forward where we don't need those districts to be created by the residents, but we are sort of setting a course to underground our town piece by piece in whatever way works for our finances or our, just ability to execute it, but that we sort of say it's our strategy to try to underground all the wires over a certain period of time. And then we don't have to put it all on the residents to create these districts.
So
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm just going to jump in. I know that Rich has a lot of information on this, but I've worked in several communities where undergrounding was a real focus, especially for wildfire risk reduction and views. They are enormously expensive and enormously staff time consuming. And so, the West, it could be $20 million. And so our town absolutely does not have the funding to be able to handle those without assessment districts. So, but even, and that's the construction of it, but what I am actually more concerned about is we really tried, I wasn't trying to be super negative, but in the staff report, we really wanted to educate the council on what staffing we have to do it. And it is Rich. It is one person that is doing all these things. So he didn't even put in his PowerPoint presentation a lot of all the bullet points that were in the staff report. And I hope if you haven't already that you do have an opportunity to read all the stuff that we depend on the public works director to do in our town. So the amount of time that Rich has to do just with the West Ross undergrounding district, the meeting with the residents, interfacing with council and the bond council and engineering and all that it takes up a huge amount of time, and it prevents us from making as much progress in our other projects that we have. And so if we do have other groups, other neighborhoods that are going to want to do this, and if the council wants staff to continue to working on this, we're going to have to be looking at additional resources. So, I worked in a city, they added on 2 full-time engineers just to staff these projects. So it's just a reality check for you. There are a lot of needs and wants in this community, and we need the council to prioritize this, or we're going to have to add staff, and then you're not going to be able to save money for your big capital projects. So I'm sorry to be, the conveyor of the tough message, but that's the news. Did you have anything to add, Rich?
No.
I did it?
You said it all.
I was negative enough for all of us?
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
thank
wanna
you.
All right,
add to
so
the
if I
negative.
could just sort of recast this for everybody, though, when the districts form, they thrust this on the town, and then the town has to react. So unfortunately, what I'm hearing from townspeople is a lot of little districts forming, and they might even be small little pockets, and it's going to take your time because their timeline is what their timeline is versus the town setting the direction and telling, hey, we're going to get to you on, in 2040. We're going to get to you in so what I'm saying is that if we set the direction, then people won't feel the need to have to form their districts, and it won't sort of move you out of our own vision of what we want. Say, the goal, strategic direction is to underground, and it's going to take us 20 years. And then we sort of set the timeline, and then people don't have to form the districts. In terms of the funding, I think the funding's the same. We will have, as these districts we form the districts essentially, and they'll have to vote, but the money will come from the tax, the same that it would before. The town's not going to pay for it. It's just, how can we strategically do this as opposed to these districts starting to sabotage whatever plans you have?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best way I can put it.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I've been trying to think of a way to tell folks exactly what Krista just said, is that you want to do an undergrounding district, you really need to get in line, or we need to come up with a strategy, as Councilmember Salter mentions, or we need to, go put a moratorium on these things, because they'll just, even just to get to a point where they can bring the district to the petitioning phase is a lot of work for me, and it would be a lot of work for Cindy, who has to, tabulate all and file all these petitions and that sort of thing. So I appreciate what Councilmember Salter is saying, that it would be nice to have council awareness of where we want to go with these undergrounding districts. Thanks.
Are there examples of other places that have done what Matt is suggesting? Are you aware of that, Krista?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to bring this up. So I worked for the city of Del Mar, which is a small community in San Diego, and they had a very high priority. A community really wanted to underground. And so they spent, so first of all, this council has spent quite a bit of time just setting up your undergrounding policies. So you've done that work. So then the next step for that community, well, they did a whole sales tax measure to in part fund it. But the council went through a very arduous, contentious process of setting up their priorities with a point system, for wildfire prevention and which streets are, what's going to be our priority. And other parts of town that didn't meet the priority because it wasn't near a school or near a major road or a high fire severity zone, they were told, you guys are going to have to wait. And then the funding fluctuates. And what ended up happening is the little neighborhoods that wanted it badly enough, over time, all the council's effort to prioritize and put some strategy to it, it started to break up. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here, but that's just some experience I've had. So, we could, with the council, work on a strategy plan. Again, that effort alone would need to be incorporated into our staff work plan. But just a cautionary note is you also get people's hopes up because they think that it's going to happen anytime soon. And you still need to get the funding, and the assessment districts are a minimum of 7 years. Would you agree, Rich, that that's about how long it takes?
Yeah, and we kind of mentioned that in our policy too. They need to know that it's, it could be as much as a 7-year process depending on the size of the district.
But we'll keep, Rich and I will talk about it and kind of think about what that would look like, because I do agree. It's helpful for staff to be able to fall back on what the council's priorities are for a program such as that. It's an undertaking to put that together.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a way to have an additional assessment on these newer districts to pay for the staff time to expedite these projects. I know we'd have to amend the policy.
Well, the assessment district's an eligible expense is staff time. Is that correct? But it's after you go through the whole process and get the votes and do the,
So
vote
none
the
of that
bond.
initial stuff is covered, right? Or the town is kind of underwriting all the initial stuff.
Right, you do have, the property owners in the West, they have given us a deposit that we're drawing down on it, but thus far, the drawdown has been on the direct expenses for attorneys that are working on it, engineers. We have not been, it's not, I don't believe that, Rich, we have been debiting that account for our city staff time, town staff time. Is that right?
No, we haven't. We're just logging the hours, more or less, of
So
my time.
maybe we should take a look at that to see how big of a hit that is, and going forward, make sure that that's fair for all the rest of the residents that aren't getting undergrounded.
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone else is basically subsidizing all that work.
And then a note on that, you mentioned expediting. Again, we need to consider who we're working with here. This is PG&E, Comcast, and AT&T. And they don't talk to each other much, and it's very difficult to get them all together. We've been successful three or four times during the process. In the past almost year, we haven't been able to even get someone from Comcast to respond that is your design done? Is it adequate? How does it look with everything else? Comcast is basically ghosting us right now, and not a lot we can do about it, except maybe, talk to someone in corporate, which would be the next thing to do. So all the staff time in the world is not going to really move PG&E and Comcast and AT&T along much faster. That's one of the constraints of these types of projects.
So maybe my suggestion is we take this as its own item, as a suggestion to come up with like our vision for undergrounding Ross. It's like our vision, and then how we would sort of slot it through, or some strategic plan that we could then talk about all together and see if we can have buy-in. And that way, it might put some of these people who are planning districts, on hold, and we could tell them, hey, we're coming up with this strategic vision, hold off on your plans, because we're going to try to organize it in a better way that works for the town and will work better for you in the end, because there's, it's going to get sidetracked.
Real quick, so several years ago, I forget when it was, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we created the undergrounding policy, which is the vision of the town. So I think what you're saying is you want to revisit that vision, or review it, and maybe work some concepts in that, to amend it. But there is a vision, and it took several years of development. I know Vice Mayor McMillan was on the committee, I forget who the other council member, and then we had bond council join us to talk about it. But some of these concepts you're talking about would be in that document. Same with, having outside resources for for staff. We can have that be a requirement. You can have all these things be requirements as long as it's in that policy.
Mayor, again, I apologize, and it's not fun to be negative Nelly here. So we've explained to you who it is that's doing that work, everything that he's doing, what's in the approved CIP, a couple of the projects that he's recommending that we move forward, such as move up earlier in the CIP. If the council wants to take a look at relooking at the undergrounding policies, it is a significant expenditure of staff time. So if you want to do that, I need to know what project that's in the CIP you want to move away. What do you want to replace it with? Because we can't do everything that's in the CIP plus take a look at the whole undergrounding program. I understand a strategic look at it is the best. That is the way that you, in an ideal world, but we don't have an ideal world. We have one person that's doing this, and we have a CIP. So you can discuss this now. We'll be coming back to the council on April 25th, I think, is the council budget work session. And you can be putting some thought between now and then on your CIP and what you want to replace. What do you want to take out of that CIP in order to do this?
It might be helpful for me to take a look at the undergrounding policy because I haven't really looked at it we did it a really long time ago. So maybe, Matt, you and I can look at that and then maybe we can discuss what we think at the April 25th meeting, not burden staff for right now. Maybe it's already all in there. We just need to kind of refresh our recollection.
Yeah, I'm happy to work with you on that, and maybe we can make it as a part of the finance subcommittee, and then we just make it an item. Yes, why don't we do that as the subcommittee? And I think, but just to be clear for everyone, the goal is to try, I think the policy is written that, it's sort of procedures, anyone can form one of these districts. And I think the fear we're all realizing is these districts start mushrooming and then there's no control over it. So I think it's trying to amend the policy so we incorporate a timeline and a vision of how we would sort of lay out the resources over a period of time.
Can I just ask a question? Ben, do you know if Tiburon or Belvedere did that as part of their undergrounding process?
Tiburon did not have like a master policy of governing who can go when. I can't speak for Belvedere. I have a vague recollection when they first did their undergrounding policy, they did split up the jurisdiction. They created the map of what they would look like as a concept. And then I thought they had provisions in their policy that talk about sequencing.
I also hear what Krista's saying, that if you want this, you're going to have to give up something in the CIP. So I know you took that tough position, but I think it's a realistic one. And I think you just don't have a lot of staff to take on new projects. So I think we as a council need to keep that in mind.
Well, and in any case, we probably shouldn't discourage the people who are already working on districts to wait, because waiting for the city might be a long wait. So they should keep going.
Oh, no, I'm sure they're going to keep going. And that's why, that's the whole point of this is actually to save all of us a lot of time and energy, hopefully. So let Julie and I, we'll work on the finance subcommittee. We have a meeting coming up and we can add this hopefully to the agenda to sort of talk about our thoughts. But just moving on from this, I did mention the field. So I was wondering when you would slot that in 2030, like or if everyone agrees, like we should look at the field. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, hopefully we can get the field done before the asteroid hits, so.
Okay, any other discussion? Yes, Krista.
I'd like to end with something positive. So what's really great about all the time that staff and the council has put into this evening is that you won't have to spend as much time on it in your April budget meeting. Because and so when Councilmember Salter had asked for this and Councilmember Robbins had this good idea of a way that the previous town manager had worked with the council in the annual budget process, I think this has worked out well. Thank you.
Good. All right, well, if we're finished, no further discussion, then it's a non-action item, so we will move on then to the next item. Thank you, Rich. So we're going to then go to item 11, 21 Glenwood Avenue, design review, a demolition permit, and town council adoption of resolution number 2504 approving the project, subject to conditions.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight, the applicant at 21 Glenwood is requesting approval for design review and a demolition permit. The project includes both an interior and an exterior renovations. along with several additions to include a family dining room area on the main floor, a second-story addition, a basement addition, and a new pool house. The remodel will also update the south and west facade by adding A-frames to match the existing home. All existing sidings will be removed and will be clad in clear stained yellow cedar shingles. The guest house and tea house will also receive new windows and a interior remodel. Furthermore, the landscape plan, which includes adding a new spa, a sports court, retaining walls, a new lawn, as well as reducing the planting bed in front of the home to accommodate a fire truck turnaround. Project also proposes impervious surfaces to increase of 942 square feet and a new bioretention area for stormwater control adjacent to the sports court in blue on the PowerPoint. On January 21st, 2025, the ADR group expressed their support for the project. Public comments were made by two of the neighbors requesting screening of the retaining walls and the construction traffic management plan. In response, the applicant has updated the landscape plan to include additional screening to soften the wall and also add a new fence between 21 and 23 Glenwood, measuring between 6 and 7 feet, along with the construction management plan. Staff requests that the council adopts Resolution 2504, approving design review and a demolition permit. Thank you.
Any further staff reports? Otherwise, I will then open this for questions from the council.
Alec, could you go back to where you're showing those double retaining walls on the top right of the property?
Sure. Let me, right there. Yep.
Yeah, the further back. The ones that show, yeah, right there, the landscape plan. See those big double walls?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What's the purpose of that area? Is that for a fire truck turnaround?
Correct. That's a fire requirement for them to do a turnaround.
So that's something that Ross Valley Fire has mandated?
Correct.
Okay. And are those walls in the setback?
They are in the setback.
So is that what requires the variance?
Negative. Retaining walls don't require a variance.
Okay. And the drainage off of those retaining walls, when does that get figured out?
They did submit a drainage plan, but that's usually happens during the building process, where Richard will review that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, if there are no questions, then let us proceed to hear from the applicant. We'll open this for public comment. So the applicant has 15 minutes. If you choose to use the entire 15 minutes, the floor is yours. And of course, if there's any opposition, you have the ability to also do a rebuttal.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Stephen Sutro, and I'm the architect for 21 Glenwood. Alex, if you could go to the first slide, please, after this cover. This slide here is the existing site plan, and the pink dashed outline is the area of setback. So on the site currently are a main house and 4 outbuildings, as Alex mentioned, a garage, carriage house that is used as a playroom, a guest house, and a small traditional Japanese tea house. The outbuildings are existing legal non-conforming structures because they are all located partially or entirely within the areas of setback. Fortunately, the main house is in the buildable area of the lot. There's also a pool and related terraces. And then on the next slide, Alex, if you would flip, is the proposed site plan. So all of the proposed work conforms to planning regulations and no variances are being requested here. Our team is proposing an addition to the main house and an expansion of the existing basement, all within the buildable area. And a new pool changing room and bathroom is proposed at the end of the pool, also inside the buildable area. The outbuildings will receive interior renovations and minor facade repair, but essentially remain the same. And a new unfenced half-size sport court is proposed at the southeast corner of the site, also within the buildable area. Adjustments to the existing landscape are also proposed, including removal of some paving around the pool. That paving is outside the setback area or resides within the area where it should not be. A new lawn adjacent to the carriage house, and removal of an artificial stream bed that's up at the corner near the tea house. We're also, as Alex mentioned, proposing to enlarge the turnaround space at the front of the existing garage. As he mentioned, that is to allow for the garage to be functional both for the cars that use the structure, but also, and importantly, to provide space for a fire truck to turn around in a shunt pattern. The existing driveway, circular as it is not enough of a radius to allow the fire truck to turn around. And nor is, there's one turnoff associated with the existing carriage house that's further down the driveway. And so we asked Rob at Ross Valley about making the turnaround there. It's in an area that's too steep. So there's a measurement of grade associated with where the truck can do its turnaround. So the property is not in compliance with fire access currently, and Rob, looking at our plan, determined that we would be able to make it compliant if we made this modification. So we're hoping that we can do that. There is some additional parking for the site that are the 3 spaces at the bottom of the drawing. There's very little way to park cars on the site currently. There's no parking along Glenwood. There's this big circle, which is really lovely, but if you park one car in it, you jam up everybody else. So we're trying to improve the way that guests can come to the property and work with the no parking along Glenwood Avenue. If you go to the next slide, please, Alex. So this is the front facade. The existing condition is on the left and the proposed is on the right. Catherine is here tonight. She's here in the audience, and she and her husband, Rob, love the house, love the historic charm of the house, and would like very much to preserve everything about the original historic elements. There have been some additions that have been made over time on the side facing Baldy and on the back side. And if you toured the property, you might have noticed that there's a little bit of a hodgepodge of roof forms going on. And so we're hoping to reconstitute those areas that have been changed over time and make them appear as if original. We found a really neat original photograph of the house. None of the stone bulwark at the front or the balustrade or the trellis are original. It used to have a really fun striped awning at the center, and the door to the house was recessed in a really neat portico kind of looking thing. So it was a lovely house originally. It still is lovely. And Rob and Catherine are hoping to retain everything but clean up some of the stuff that's happened on the sides and back, as well as make it larger for their family. If you flip to the next, or just through those, maybe slowly, I don't need to talk about them very much unless anyone has any questions, but we hope that this is a smarter looking house at the back than it is today, and that we're kind of healing the things that have been done to it over time. All of that is within the buildable area, and we hope ends up looking kind of original, or that someone visiting the property is convinced that it's a holistic kind of design. This is the small pool house that is on the area of existing pool deck. That is all within the buildable area too. This is the materials board that shows the existing slate is to be retained, taken off, and put back on the roof. It's a great fire-resistant material. It's very beautiful and old. The cedar shingles, the stone exists on many of the site walls. That would be retained, and there is bluestone on the patio. The trim is rendered a little too white, but it would be a cream color that was in that slide. I want to focus maybe most of our time on the changes that we made in that area of the driveway, because we met with the neighbors and they're here tonight. And we had a couple meetings to show them the plan, and we story polled that corner of the driveway for them, and then met at the site to look at it and look at the screening between the properties, look at the height of the walls, et cetera. Driveways and parking are allowed within the setback areas, as are walls that are less than 6 feet tall. And if you need to step walls, as this solution is trying to deploy, you're asked to put 3'6" at least between the walls, or maybe 3 feet. 3 feet. So there's 3'6" between the walls to allow for planting both between the walls and at the base. And so in the elevation on a later slide, we'll see that we're trying to screen from the neighbor's perspective the view of those retaining walls. As well, there is a deer fence that runs the length of that shared property line, and it's a chicken wire fence held up by bamboo poles that have been driven in the ground. It's a really, but what's charming about the whole area is that it's all green, and the fence doesn't matter because there's all this greenery there, and it's lovely. It doesn't quite extend high enough to cover the view of the back of the carriage house, and the neighbors here would really wish that it would, because the carriage house was a disappointing piece of construction for them when it was made. It was made with a variance itself, and I think it just maybe shouldn't have been. But it's a big structure, and it's there, it's very stout. And so our goal is to cover that entire property line with screening. There are several trees that are on the neighbor property and the subject property. There are a bay, an oak, a couple other things, and they're quite tall and mature and lovely. The fire department is now adopting a policy where they do not want small trees under big trees, because we don't want them to act as a ladder fuel. The worst thing that we could have in Ross is a crown fire, where a fire hot enough to burn the crowns of the trees extends everywhere. And when you have such a fire, it's really impossible to stop. So you can have plants underneath large trees as long as there's a 10-foot separation between the top of the mature specimen that you're planting and the crown of the trees above. And so very selectively, we're going to have to work to remove the small trees that Rob wishes be removed. They're 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, bays primarily in that area. And we're going to be left with a bunch of spotty holes. And then Rob and Catherine are committed to planting the highest, tallest, most robust things that will mature at an appropriate height that does not create the linkage of possible for crown fire. As well, plant ground cover that stabilizes the soil in that area. That area between the two properties is a runoff area that is unmanaged. It's held in place by all the roots of these things. And so we don't want to make that worse, we want to make it better. The driveway that is proposed to be extended currently has no drainage. It's asphalt that runs off into this landscape area, and it's eroded the small wood retaining wall that holds it up. So we're creating impervious surface, increasing the impervious surfaces. We realize this, that in that area particularly, it's required by the fire department that it be impervious, because no material that is sand set and is pervious will be allowed by the fire truck to turn around on. They don't want to be liable for the damage that the fire truck would cause. So we're managing the water through a robust civil engineering plan where there would be surface drains along the edge of the driveway extension, and then there would be subsurface drains catching anything that's in the hillside on the backside of the walls. All of that water would go down to the bioretention center that is planned to mitigate water runoff from charging onto Glenwood. Further, at the bottom of the driveway, if you visit the property, there's a swale that enters the driveway gates, and it's just a round pipe with a hole in it, and it gets clogged by soccer balls more often than not. And so the plan is to put a large area grate with redundancy, something that if it got clogged with sticks and a large runoff would still function, and that sends that water down into wherever Rich tells us it's supposed to go after that. Let's see. So I want to make sure I hit all the points that Diane and Frank mentioned about that, because I think that everyone so far has expressed great support for the project. Aesthetically, functionally, it's within the buildable area, and we're reducing the amount of the small amount of pool deck that exceeds the setback there. We're making it smaller just for lounge chairs, and right now it's a large space. So in all ways, we're making this project more compliant with code and feel very good about it. And two people came to speak at ADR. One, the neighbor that we're discussing, and the second is Bob, who's here in the audience, and helped us put together a really great construction management plan. We were able to go through the details of that with him very carefully, and we're really pleased that he had it ready and worked with us to put that together. So that seems fine. And so really it's about making sure that we're doing everything we can to please the neighbors on this top side of this diagram. And so she was concerned about water, or they were concerned about water mitigation, about the screening to this element, and that right now, these properties look up and down to one another, and it would be great if this subject property didn't see the roof of her building, and she didn't have to look at the back of that carriage house or the stepped landscape walls that we're creating. And I think she'll speak too. And if there's something that we've missed, we're happy to address it. But we were pleased to have Roberta help put together a meeting with her so that we could go carefully through her concerns. So I'm around if you have questions. Thank you.
All right, does anyone else wish to be heard in connection with this project? Okay. Welcome.
I just wanted, Mayor, council members, first of all, I want to start by thanking everybody who helped Frank and I deal with what needs to happen on that property. Right up until 5 o'clock, Roberta was on the phone with me. Alex helped. Stephen helped. His team helped. Catherine's been wonderful from the get-go. And Rob came in from a job yesterday, and when I was listening to your being overstretched for your bandwidth, spent time with me, helping me understand some engineering things. So I think it's really important. My husband and I have been in favor of this project from the beginning. We are happy to have and really pleased that the Hales have purchased the house and are going to do the renovations that they're going to do, and never had any concern at all until after the fire department came and looked at the project and said, you have to have a turnaround. And once that came in, I believe that was the 10th of January that fire report, at least the one that I saw, came out. So everybody's been working as much as they can to deal with it. My concern was always and ever about flooding and work. And so I was going to bring a handout to you that was the notes from our meeting, but of course it's in my other folder. Is that like saying my dog ate the homework anyway? I sent it to you, but I just wanted to include it in the approval because it spells out what we agreed to, which is that Stephen has very kindly offered to have his engineer talk with us once they go into the permitting and pulling permit processes, so that all of my concerns can be put to sleep. And just want to say that my husband and I are in favor of the project. We do want to be sure about the drainage, and it's in the plans, but just how it works, I'm not the best at reading construction plans. And then I understand that doing the screening that you would like to do is also hindered by what the fire department allow, and that you've worked very hard to come up with something for that. So just want to say that we do support the project and we do support it. I sent you'll get this email, the little handout I was going to give you. But anyway, I would like to have the project approved, but I also like to have that little note entered into it. So thank you very much. I can read it, but you don't need to spend the time. Everybody needs to go home.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, council members, town attorney and staff, thank you for your service to the town. I'm Bob Dickinson. We've lived at 41 Glenwood for 27 years. We're 2 driveways down from 21 Glenwood. We welcome Catherine, Rob, and the entire Hale family to Glenwood Avenue. Rob was extraordinarily generous with his time. He walked me through their property, describe the plans that you've seen on the diagrams. At the time, I mentioned to Rob how construction management plans were developed for the McDermott rebuild, the Califatis rebuild, the 3 Pritzker projects, and the remodels for the Battels and the Zelayas, all on Glenwood. I gave Rob and his team a copy of the latest plan that Frank and I helped develop for the 2nd or 3rd Pritzker project, I forget which. And Rob gave his suggestions, I think, along with his team, and we went through one iteration of refinements, and we have landed on a construction management plan for 21 Glenwood. Here is a copy of the plan, and I hope you have that as part of the application. A number of the conditions reiterate terms in the municipal code. Why would you have to do that? You see, for us, it says as important to agree on how a construction project will be conducted as it is what they plan to build. The construction management plan does just that. We kindly request that it be a condition for approval by the council. While we expect the owners in Farallon, the general contractor at 21 Glenwood, to oversee all activities and subcontractors, we also expect the town to oversee the project and to ensure compliance, as well as to make sure that the limit for construction duration is enforced. Neighbors adversely affected by construction will appreciate your efforts, and I know I already appreciate the care that the Hales and their team have already taken in that regard. So I wish you great luck with the project. Welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Is anyone else present here to speak on this matter? The applicant does have time for rebuttal if you wish, or you wish to address any of this. I do have a question, whether you're okay with adding the construction plan as part of the conditions of approval? Yes. All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any council members have
And
questions?
are you okay adding Ms. Duda's notes also?
Yes, we collaborated in writing them, and we're pleased to.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right. Well, I'll bring it back to the staff unless you have a question. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious, Planning Director Roberta Feliciano, if you could just explain to us just about sort of the town's, while construction is going on, how we sort of monitor and evaluate the construction process and make sure that some of these terms in municipal code are followed.
So when the applicant submits for a building permit, the first page includes all the conditions of approval. There are 3 plan sets. We keep 1 in the office, and there's 2 at the job site. So that's how they're informed. And then before the project starts, we always have a pre-construction meeting where we would go over these conditions, anything related to the construction management plan. That way, the contractors and everyone involved is aware of those conditions.
Yes, sorry, I meant the monitoring, because what I've heard through this process is sometimes people are upset about things that happen during construction and the length of construction, and maybe the subcontractors aren't following the plan. And so I'm wondering, does Eric go out, like how do we sort of make sure we're doing our part as the town to make sure things are running smoothly?
That's right. So Eric's out on inspections 8:30 to 11:30, Monday through Thursday. Part of that is reviewing ongoing construction, making sure that everything is going smoothly. Of course, if we receive a complaint, then we would address that and look into any issues that might be happening at that job site. I would say there are a few times when we do get those complaints and we're quick to address them.
And then just lastly, construction timelines, we all hear that everything takes a lot longer than people anticipate. How do you handle sort of the extension or need for extra time?
So there is no extension, but there are some pretty harsh penalties that are motivating the contractors to complete. So they get a 30-day grace period depending on their valuation. After that, there's 250, and it goes all the way up to $1,000 a day of penalties. I think that sort of helps expedite or make sure that folks are completing projects within their time limit of completion of construction.
No, so I'm sorry, there's no exceptions if there was a problem? Nothing?
None. Unless, there's like natural disasters, or, I mean, there's very, very few. Exactly, there's very, very small or few exceptions, and how that works is that the applicant would have to come back after and file an appeal that would go to the council.
Okay, well, aside from this project, it might be nice if this is a persistent problem with timelines or issues with monitoring, just your suggestions to come back to revise code or come up with ordinances that make it run smoother. I've just heard, obviously, as these things have come through, there's always some hiccups. Thank you.
I'd like to add, in response to Councilmember Salter's inquiry, is we have had a couple of construction projects in this past year which have had some complaints regarding parking of what the complainants believe is construction-related parking. And, one of the requirements is that the parking they have to legally park. And because of all these complaints, we've had the Chief Pata has worked with his team to really start enforcing. And, the police department was pretty nice on giving warnings and stuff. But at certain sites, we've really just had to get tough with, and unfortunately, sometimes during those enforcement, you kind of, the net kind of gets some of the locals, because the neighbors need to be parking correctly and not speeding and making sure they stop at the stop signs. But we've done a lot more law enforcement, getting at it from a law enforcement. And what's been great is to have the council's support of that. And it seems to have really helped in a couple of the recent problem areas.
Terry.
I'm ready to move. So I move we approve resolution number 2506.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan? Aye. Councilmember Dowling?
Aye.
Mayor Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Councilmember Salter?
Aye.
Okay, with a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. And we will now move on to our last set of items.
Is there a last agenda item?
So we're on,
Yeah, future agenda items.
well, we're on item 13, council.
Let's hope. It's nice how they all work together.
Ready to continue.
Really.
We are on now item 13, no action items. So council correspondence, any council correspondence? All right, and then item 13B is future council items. Does anyone have any items to propose?
So I think we have to talk about how we want to address the firehouse issue.
Okay. Does anyone have any
I
specific
have some
proposals?
suggestions. I have some suggestions I essentially have 3. One is just directing staff to explore joining Kentfield Fire District or Central Marin, and just opening up conversations on whether they would even be open to accepting us and potential costs, and just sort of estimating what that would entail. So
And
that,
we're doing this as it relates to a future council?
yes.
Okay, good.
Exactly, like how we want to direct
Okay.
the item. So that's one idea. The second is creating an ad hoc committee to explore potentially annexing Kenfield and combining Ross with Kenfield and joining, as a part of that, the Kenfield Fire District. So those would be two of my suggestions.
So mine would be just looking forward to, at the meeting, I think information which is already being set up from the fire officials, and then knowing that people are asking, well, are there any options? A ballpark figure, even if it's old, for a few options, and the ones I would ask for are, what would it cost if Ross has its own independent fire station? And what would it cost if Ross stays with Ross Valley, but funds an engine on our own? So I think that those would be costs that would be helpful to hear, because I think that would lead the conversation in the direction of the public in one direction or another. But I'm not sure that I want to talk about annexing Kenfield. I think if you,
So right now, we're just talking about whether there's two votes to
Oh.
move an item for the future agenda. So I think it's going to be easier if we go through these each. So I think Councilmember Salter had two ideas. Is there a second for either one of those ideas?
so I would second the Kentfield one. And
Direct
then,
staff to explore Kentfield Fire or Central Marin?
yes, sure. And then I would also suggest we explore,
Yeah, before we get to yours, I just want,
Yeah.
otherwise we're just going to end up
Okay.
in a debate of all these in one thing. So there's two for an agenda item on direct staff to explore Kentfield Fire or Central Marin. Is there anyone who wants to support Councilmember Salter on creating an ad hoc committee to explore annexation with Kentfield? Okay, so now, Councilmember Robbins, you have
so
potential
then
future
my
agenda
other
items?
suggestion is to have staff give us a ballpark figure. What would it cost if Ross had its own independent fire station?
Are you speaking of construction and operation then, when you say fund?
Sure, sure. But especially operation,
Yes.
we've had cost estimates already. I mean, old, but,
Yes.
And I was suggesting this just because I think that people in the audience, members of the public, will want to know some of these figures, and they may, well, I don't have to explain it, but I think that would be something I would like us to have a number for. Right.
Yes, I support that.
I guess the other thing that I've heard people ask is, if we stay in Ross Valley, what if we fund our own engine with people? What sort of cost would that be? And to me, basically, keeping this engine, and we fund 3 people to keep it going, because the station's closing. So it's sort of reopening the station on our own, but staying with Ross Valley. Again, I think these things are going to be prohibitively expensive, but it helps to know the cost. You just, is it 20 million a year or something? And I really wouldn't want staff to spend a lot of time on this. I think that it's just, for me, it's just a ballpark figure of, is this even remotely possible based on what the cost is?
So you're saying, sorry, to reopen the station and staff it? That's
Right.
the item,
Right,
and the costs associated with that.
right. Maybe that's, maybe,
So, well, when you say reopen, our firefighters would still go to these other stations, so we would need,
we need to hire 9 more people.
9 if we staffed with 3 people,
Or-
or 6 if we staff with 2 people, as we do now.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, only because that's what people are asking. Can
Yeah.
we do this?
How much would it cost?
Right.
And, okay,
And then we would still stay in Ross Valley and have their overhead. I mean, have their,
so, yes, well, I mean, I don't want to start arguing these things, but we need some specificity here, because when you have an open fire station, you have firefighters, but you also have a fire chief.
No, so I'm saying
Some
in this
jurisdictions-
scenario, we stay with Ross Valley,
So
but
they
we
will
self,
provide the overhead. the
we sort of
direct-
self-fund,
direct it.
we
We'll
self-fund
still have
keeping this
firefighters
open.
here. Okay, just like we
Right.
do now, right?
Is that a legal option that we can do? Didn't we already agree to close the station?
Well, I think, I mean, whether it's a legal option, we can't do it on, it's a JPA. We'd have to negotiate the JPA. But I think
Well-
what Councilmember Robbins is suggesting is bringing an agenda item back to find out what the options are for the ability to stay with Ross Valley and require, and self-fund our way to an engine that stays in Ross. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, I think these are all going to be prohibitively expensive, but I think we need to know that.
It's not just an engine, that we would also need to rebuild the fire station, right?
Correct.
So
But I think
we
that,
should be clear on that.
yes. I think it's the staffing that, year in, year out, it's going to be, impossible. But I mean, again, people were asking, and if we had a ballpark figure, then it's a better starting point than just people saying, well, what can we do?
Yeah, and just to, I think, make it a little easier is, I think what we're all voicing is, what are the alternatives? What are all the alternatives? Which ones should we include in the staff report? That's like, these are the potential alternatives. Here's how much each alternative might cost, and the pros and cons.
Pluses and the minuses.
Exactly, of each of these alternatives. So I suggested the Central Marin and exploring those conversations of joining there. And Councilmember Robbins has suggested an independent fire station.
Didn't you say Kentfield? Not Central?
I said Kentfield and Central Marin. It's
Both?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
So that's one alternative, and then she supported me. And now she's saying, okay, well, what if we build our new station and we staff it ourselves? That's an alternative. And then, or we try to stay with Ross Valley, rebuild our station, and try to staff it with 2 or 3 staff members.
You're going to respond?
We can't respond because they have
Oh,
two
that's right.
people, right?
Okay, yep.
But I guess Krista.
Yeah, and sorry, that alternative I also support. These are all just to include as options. I don't know how we all will vote, it's just to make sure we have these as alternatives.
Well, you have the two, it seems, but would these be separate
They have
agenda
3.
items, or can
There's
we
Oh, so
put them
I'm
all
sorry.
together?
I'm trying to say it's
Maybe
one
all
agenda
together.
item of the alternatives. Which alternatives do we want to include in there? Is that?
But if we have old data from 4 years ago, I'm totally fine with that.
So-
You can add inflation, but I don't want a lot of work going into this. I want more of a ballpark figure.
So I just want to clarify with everyone here is that this is just to put these items on the agenda. I will not be doing any of this research, any of this work, unless 3 members of the town council direct me to do so. So that's what, I just want to be clear that that's how this works. Are you all on the same page with me on there? Are we all getting this? I'm not coming back at your next meeting with all this information. 3 of you have to direct that we expend town resources on an agenda item. That is the purpose of that policy. That's the purpose of the policy. It's not 2 of you putting the items on the agenda and then staff has to expend a lot of resources to do this. You have to talk about it, get input from the public, and then if there are 3 members of the council that want me to find out, write a letter to Central Marin, all the things that would be required, then I go forward and do it.
So that means that we
Yeah,
would have
I've
to
never
talk about
heard
it
that
in March.
I'm sorry, what?
So that would mean we'd talk about it in March. I mean, you would get your direction in March in that case. I mean, we
Right.
can't have 3 people now, we can't discuss it.
Yeah, we don't
Right.
even have the information.
Okay, well, then we will have something on the agenda, and we may have to seek more information with 3 people. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, that's fine.
So I would like information developed to indicate that, why we made this decision in 2021 and how actually things have improved since 2021. Information from Jason Weber about the overall emergency dispatch system, information from Mark Brown about over $100 million spent by Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority to make Marin safer, information about how a Paradise Fire is not going to happen if we keep our fire station open. All the operational things that I keep hearing by residents who are freaking out. They're going to have their insurance canceled because we're closing our fire station. You know, the ambulance is leaving because the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority may pull out despite what the deployment study says, despite our work to negotiate a long-term lease. How we're much better off to have 2 people in Ross than have 3 people on an engine in 3 stations. So 9 people in the Ross Valley is much worse than 8 people across 4 different fire stations. I would like to focus on those types of things. And also maybe get a little more information about the situation in Belvedere.
That's quite a few points. I wonder if there's a way to kind of put all that in one category, so we have an agenda item.
Well,
I mean, it sounds like I would support that, but I mean, I think we need a little more.
I thought you already said that we have 3 speakers coming already, and that's basically what they will be addressing, isn't it?
Well, no.
If you all are going to abbreviated staff report with the issues that you all propose now, like a staff report with the issues that I'm proposing. So that when the public is reading stuff, they're reading stuff that's balanced and fair instead of, you know, misinformation and fear.
I'm hearing two different general subjects. One is keeping our fire station open and ways to fund that or staff it. The other one is a little different. It's if we stay with our decision, what's the impact now? We're giving kind of an update on where are we? Are there going to be operational problems or effects, that kind of thing?
But, you know, my approach is not so much so concrete, it's are there even options? That's where the dollar amounts kind of comes in. But anyway.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if there's one thing that I would like, if it's possible at the meeting, is to, I think that if the meeting will have a large audience if we're going to be talking about the fire station, and people are going to want to know the history. So I would really like to spend some time on how we got to this place and understand what happened.
Yeah.
And I would like it to be graphic. I would like to see,
Hold on just
yes,
a second. It's gonna
I would like to see a timeline, because what I've been hearing is people are saying, oh, they're closing the fire department. Well, yes, that was the decision made years ago. So it's like a surprise for people. So let's hear the history so that people really understand how we got to where we are today.
You know, the more I'm listening to this, it almost sounds like we need a special session for this.
A special meeting, I
Yeah,
think we do.
I think we should have a special, separate meeting.
All the guys, I think, are lined up to come on March 13th, right?
So, you know, for me, the difference for me is I can put, it's not going to take me a lot of staff time to take existing documents that were already researched and prepared 4 years ago. I can put that together and, you know, put it into the agenda report. Because the council already made this decision, I thought, well, an obvious question, a reasonable question is to ask our fire chief, okay, station is closing pretty soon. What are the impacts going to be on our community, or how is fire service going to be provided to this community? So he can do that. And it's not taking town resources for him to do that. He's already doing that, right? He's already planning for it. So, but these new items are going to take town staff time, and they had consultants that worked on it 4 years ago. I'm not any different than they were. I'm going to have consultants that talk about, cost to starting up a station, all that. So that is an expenditure of staff resources, which is why I need to have the consensus of the whole council, not just 2 of you, 3 of you. Tell me that's what, and then we can talk about timing, because it's sure not going to be a month, right? It's going to be multiple months. So I thought if that was something that we could start with, is having our fire chief, and because there's been a lot of questions, the council has had a lot of questions about paramedic response time. The best person to be able to answer those questions is Chief Weber, and he has agreed to come speak to the council. I could have him actually come and speak under the town manager's report and not have it be an agenda item. I know we're kind of brainstorming a little bit, but I just want you to understand kind of that. I want you to understand, especially council members Salter and Robbins, that there's a difference between work that's not taking much of staff time, and then other things that are, and you are asking for things that are going to take staff time, and that's why I need I need a majority of the council to direct me to do that.
Well, okay, I'm just going to say whether we, have these issues that we'd like explored as alternatives, I really wish that the 2 of you were there on Monday. I mean, this is a very...
Cut this off now. We can't be debating about what the...
Yeah, I
This is
think we
whether
just,
something gets agendized or
Well,
not.
no, we're trying to figure out how to agendize it.
Well, let me
because
suggest something.
I'm saying we need a
Right.
special session.
You have
There's
two-
not enough
Well-
time.
Well, you
So it
have
sounds
two
like we'll have
items.
information from our 3 fire people. We'll have questions from us, we'll have questions from the public. And I think that if the public is saying, well, we're not satisfied, we'd like some options, then the council discusses, do we want to look into options and what would they be? Is that what you're saying, Krista, that that's going to be happening in March if it happens at all?
I liked how you summarized that. Thank you.
But we have to, the alternatives need to be brought forth as these are potential routes. We stay the course, or these are potential alternatives.
The agenda language broad enough, so after the presentation, you all can discuss about what you just heard and direct staff on any further steps, including these options that you laid out tonight. So I think that's what I'm hearing to be the consensus of
I
all
think
5
that's
of
right.
you.
I mean,
to
'cause
have an
the-
agenda item
Chris
where
is
you
saying
hear
she
about the
needs-
history, and then, as Krista, the town manager, correctly notes, she needs direction before she starts spending resources on any of these options, and that has to be at least 3 people giving her that direction.
Okay, that sounds, I mean, I
but
think
we
that's fine.
can discuss the options, but to get the underlying details and all that, we need 3 people, because we may need a consultant or somebody to guide this or put it together. Is that?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Well, and also, can I just say that maybe if we hear the current information, these other options will fall by the wayside, because going forward, everything is taken care of. And that's what the 3 guys are going to help us understand better.
I think that's very wishful thinking.
Well,
But
Enough direction for what the agenda item's going to look like, and we can move on.
Before you adjourn, there's a really important technical issue that Mr. Sutro just brought to my attention, and I need to bring it to Ben's attention before you. Can I just do that? Or
yes.
it's not an agenda item. Oh, would you please take a really short brief recess, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely. We're taking a break or a recess. There's another technical item. I already signed the resolution approving 12 Canyon, the one we took off calendar. I wasn't paying attention. I crossed it out. Not approved, unapproved. I think that was good to clamp down on some of this construction. What about the problem? Oh, come on.
We're back. We have a procedural issue that we need to correct on the motion back on agenda item 11. We moved the wrong resolution forward. We moved the resolution on 12. So
I'm just a robot. I already signed it. It's too late.
So we need a motion by since it was unanimous, we need a motion by someone to reconsider that approval in a second.
This is number 11?
No, we approved 12.
We need, let's do that. Motion to reconsider.
Oh, really?
The approval of item.
2506.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is there a motion?
I move we reconsider Resolution 2506.
Is there a second? Correct. We're
redoing.
correcting it. You take roll call, please.
It's correct.
It's, yeah.
Roll call.
Ready? Mayor Pro Tem McMillan? Aye. Councilmember Dowling? Mayor Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Councilmember Salter?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, so now we're back to reconsidering on item 11. Let's make sure there's no public comment since it's being reconsidered. Is there any public comment?
I'm so confused.
Nope.
I thought we were just.
Not seeing any.
No.
Now-
You
Yes.
made us reconsider 2506.
Okay.
Now is there,
Approved 2506 by accident.
I would like to move correctly to approve resolution number 2504.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan? Aye. Councilmember Dowling?
Aye.
Mayor Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Councilmember Salter?
Aye.
And with a vote of 5, the motion passes.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
Oh,
he
boy.
doesn't want to leave without that.
That was a good catch. That was a very good catch. I
bad.
It's
know.
nice, people are listening.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just corrected it.
that was great.
Reconsider.
Oh, boy.
Sort of. I guess, yes. I
Wait,
think
wait,
we're,
so we decided we're going to have this discussion at the council meeting and not do a special session. Is
I
that
think
correct?
so.
oh, yeah, I think so.
I mean, that can be decided as we get to the close of the agenda, right? Well, it sounds like it has to be the
Well-
council meeting, and if we need another meeting for the council of it.
And maybe we could have a special meeting then.
For that. Because it's already set to the,
It's set, we've got 3 people coming.
Yeah.
the date already set.
Right.
With a fire.
Right.
But that has to be the council meeting.
If we just go ahead on the assumption that we'll do this on the regular calendar and we change our minds, can the mayor and vice mayor and town manager just set a special session, or do we need to come back to the council for that? I assume we could.
They're coming on that day, we don't want.
Yeah.
I know they
we-
are, but I'm just saying, if something came up or they couldn't come on that day,
There's 3 more, we have 3 more weeks before we finalize the agenda and the agenda packet and send it out for the May 13th meeting. And we need to reserve, I work with the mayor and the mayor pro tem to put the agenda together. So, if we can, hopefully we'll be able to fit it in and have it all, because it's hard. It's hard for you to have special meetings. I really understand that. So, but we do need to reserve, I recommend that we reserve the right to, if we need to, move this off the agenda and have a special meeting. But as we always do, before we schedule a special meeting, we always poll the council, because we want you all and our town attorney to be able to be there.
As you said, March 13th, you already had a big agenda. So I'm just telling you that there's going to be a lot of public comment, and it's going to be a very long meeting, because a lot of people showed up on Monday that are going to probably come again, and every seat was full. So Branson was the same way. I think it's going to be even bigger. So that's all I'm trying to
We
say.
have our consultants on the 13th. I think we should do everything we can to keep that the date. And if we need to continue our meeting with the rest of our business to another date, we continue to another date. Right. Seems like a regular meeting with consultants already scheduled, that's really important to keep that. So that's a-
okay. All right.
It's up to you.
Anything else? Are we good?
So
Okay.
may I just real quickly go through what the agenda item would consist of? So in the agenda report, I'm going to put as much background as I can find, that's already pre-done, okay? And then I'll have there, that'll be I'll have to work it out with Ben, the wording, but I'll list these, because we definitely don't want more than one agenda item, because then people can speak multiple times. So I would have, well, I guess you would then propose that you want to have an agenda item. It's so late, I'm kind of confusing myself. Ben, can you help me?
Yeah, it would just be direction, you have the agenda item of presentation by, people you want to present on how we got to where we are. And then in the staff report, you put all those, all the documents you're talking about together. At the end of the staff report, you can add a section that says some council members at tonight's meeting suggested future action to include, potential options, and list the options that got 2 votes tonight. And you're here to take further direction on what, if any, steps to take. So in that sense, you'll have all these options in the staff report, so the staff will know that those will come up from a Brown Act perspective, and that those will be discussed, but you're not committing to doing any of those at next month's meeting.
Okay.
So maybe, sorry, the wording, maybe history and update on the closing of the Ross Station and potential alternatives.
I think that's broad enough to cover everything that would probably be discussed. I mean, we can refine this as we go ahead, but we had the direction from the council as to what to put on the calendar. Good.
And so it's the 3 things is the exploring joining Central Marin Fire or Kentfield Fire Protection District, right?
Yes.
Joining them. Okay. A ballpark figure on constructing and operating an independent fire department, and then a ballpark figure for paying Ross Valley Fire Department to add our service back in, add our station back in,
Correct.
plus a new station.
And maybe I mean, the numbers would be great, but just even listing in the staff report, these are 3 alternatives, and just leaving them, and we discuss them, and we say, well, do we have 3 council members support any of those? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that you need to do like a bunch of work. We've identified that these 3 may be other paths. We don't know. We'd love numbers if we can get them, but the point of the discussion is whether we should do it. Maybe by the end of the meeting, Councilmember McMillan is right, and everyone's like, oh, stay the course. We don't need, why would we ever do any alternative? But it's just listed as, here's the history, here's the update on the closing, and here's potential alternatives.
I think if we have anything about alternatives, I think it should be couched in something like, are there any financially feasible alternatives? I mean, the reason I was hoping for numbers is because sadly, I don't think any of them are feasible. And I feel like that way we show that we've looked into alternatives and that there aren't any, but we're done with that issue.
We have to cut this off. I mean, members of the public are entitled to hear this conversation. It's not on the agenda.
Right. I think we have a pretty good idea of where to go. As I said, as this agenda comes together, we'll be specific and make sure it is broad enough. And but I think we can work on that.
Yeah, 'cause I don't want people
Specific wording,
thinking
I mean.
we can have our own station without knowing that it's like 20 million a year. I mean, they need to know that.
Okay, but
Because then
I'm
it's.
sure it'll come up, but I don't think we can, I think Ben's telling us we
We
can't really get into
we
the
did pretty well. We
nitty-gritty.
actually got a lot discussed.
Well, okay. Yes, please, Terry.
I don't even know if this is appropriate, but I would, you let me know, Ben, right? I would just hope that at that meeting that we have in March, that it's a thoughtful meeting, and that we can all sort of keep our passions under control, because it's really for the community to have them hear what's going on, and maybe they'll have opportunities to ask questions. But I would hate it to be a contentious meeting where everybody leaves feeling angry. And if there's any way that we could avoid that from happening, that it's an informational meeting. It's an information and opportunity to discuss things. So good luck, Mayor, trying to keep it all together.
Well, I join in that hope, and hopefully it will be that way. It wasn't always that way on Monday, but hopefully in our town council chambers with the regular meeting, it will be. So with that, I think we're finished, and I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Okay, hopefully.